Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Russo. We have a quorum.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, any agenda changes or conflict for this evening? Hearing none. Citizens appearing before council for items not appearing on the agenda. Seeing none. Council comments.
You have a little talking stick? A couple of things. I had a mention from some of our residents in West Glenwood that, and this might be a CDOT question, but at least if the city could investigate that some of that parking area along the highway that CDOT uses for trucks, they are seeing trucks parked there for long periods of time. And some of them are what they called white van trucks, something that you can't really see inside, and they're just concerned about trafficking. So anyways, if we could just kind of explore that or work with CDOT or find out what's going on.
Do you think they would be willing to individually send me an email that I could forward to CDOT? Because when those were set up, it was a little contentious, and I think they need to see it, not me complaining.
Okay, I'll ask them to do that. Just a concern, especially with the trafficking we see on I-70. I mentioned it earlier. I noticed as I was taking a walk along the Rio Grande corridor behind Safeway, there's trash now being thrown down along the embankments, and just make sure that we're kind of keeping caught up on that. And I know the city does a great job, but I just wanted to point that out. And then my last thing is a request that we have, our council had voted to move the annexation question to next month's first session for council, and I won't be here at that time, and I'd like to be able to be here and ask the council consider moving that to the second meeting in October. I'm not here on the 7th, and that is the date that I think we voted on last time.
I would make a motion to move that. We actually can't, because I mean, we could that night. Okay. We can't tonight. Neither the public nor the applicant are here, and also you have a pending, part of the reason for that is the motion on the table, if you'll recall, was the motion to continue, the motion to deny. And so it's not just as simple as moving the hearing to the next date. So there's no way for me to know the outcome of that vote.
But I won't be here for that vote, so.
No, I recognize that issue, but had we known that at the time that the motion was made, maybe we could have done it differently. I am just uncomfortable unilaterally making that decision, given that the public was unhappy that it was continued to begin with, and to continue it again, I think is tough on them. I mean, I think it's up to council if what they do that night. But in either case, the developer is going to need to be here and prepared and ready to go. Like I said, we're in a little bit different place than we were, than it's just a regular land use hearing, because we have a motion on the table. Yes, Tim.
Oh, I was going to ask her a question, but.
I'm sorry.
Oh, but, sure, go ahead. I'm sorry. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
But I'm next.
But Steve was next.
Oh, that's right.
Steve. I don't want to upset you. I was just curious but then on that night we could make a motion, and give the public and the developer a heads up.
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
Absolutely. I'm just, like I said, I am a little uncomfortable changing things up tonight.
Thank you.
And that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up. I had mentioned it at the end of that meeting, which was a little too late, but I'd also told the mayor and the city manager before that meeting that I would be gone, so I just wanted to offer that opportunity. So if
and I get it.
If there's that opportunity on that meeting night for somebody to bring it up, that'd be great. And then, lastly, I did have one other thing. Jonathan, at the end of the last meeting, you had brought up what our considerations are for council and the mask. And I didn't really feel like we had time to talk about it. It was just kind of like, what does everybody think? And I'd love to have that as a discussion moving forward in a future agenda.
We have it right now.
We had it once we do.
Yeah, let's get past the proclamation, and we could do it underneath the manager's report.
Okay, so it'll be at the end of the meeting again.
Okay, thank you.
Council comment. Sorry to take up your time with this. Once again, we permitted a foot race in this community at, I don't know, 5K, 10K, whatever that was, probably a great deal. However, they have completely littered our town with graffiti. And we've talked about this before where, you know, all they got to do is lay down chalk, but instead they take spray paint and paint all over the sidewalks, arrows that go nowhere and in the middle of, you know, for no reason at all. And I think they should have to come back and clean all that off once again.
And Brian, you guys oversaw the permitting of that, right? Can we make that request that they come back and clean it up? And do we still have any other, I know they didn't really pay much of a deposit, but.
Or they can't get that permit back again, or it ought to be in their permit sheet that, you know, the requirements for having these events that you don't spray paint our community.
I think it is.
But we've talked to them about it before. We withheld a damage deposit before, because we had to power wash and repaint over that.
All right. Crazy.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. I'm far away. Just to what Paula said, I'm really not interested in discussing masks tonight. We have a lot of other things on the agenda, but I think maybe that would be appropriate for another night, but you guys decide. Just real quickly, I've noticed that the mayor being elected from this council, this was particularly true with Leo and with Mr. Gamba. I remember watching that vote live on television, I think, that it tends to split the council a lot. It's done this council a little bit sometimes. I'd like us to maybe have a work session, and I know we've talked about this a million times, to readdress the city charter for a direct vote. I think it seems to work better in other communities. I think particularly with hard issues, I think the people feel like they're better represented, but just something I'd like to discuss at some point, if there's another person who wants to add that. Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that so often
I will go ahead and encourage us to have that work session, because I think that we have been kind of reinforcing that having an opportunity to talk about things as a council and making sure that what's important to one person is heard and what's important to another is heard, and making the time, I will support that, Tony, as well. And we shall see how it plays out. My request this evening is to all of us that I have received feedback from the community that you have a hard time hearing us, both on, you know, when you're here in other rooms and online. And so if we could all just speak up, and, you know, if we need to make clarifying points to making sure everyone hears us, I think that that's a benefit to the community and also to the Post-Independent, so that they can hear what we say and make sure that our votes are accurately registered.
Will that be resolved a little bit, Deborah, when the microphone situation changes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this evening, but moving forward, thank you.
So tonight I'll talk really loud.
Really loud, Tony. Really loud. Okay, great.
Okay, I had one item tonight, and it concerns the property that we've talked about behind Walmart, where we did the big cleanup of the homeless camps earlier this year in partnership with Garfield County. Actually took on most of that cleanup. Apparently, there are people moving back onto that property, and you know, there had been conversations and talk about trying to move that forward into a situation where the property is privately owned and potentially the city could have a trail easement on that property. Roaring Fork Outdoor volunteers might be able to go in and build trails for the city, and then we would work at maintaining that area going forward. So I just wanted to check in with council. It seems right now those talks have kind of stalled. And rather than seeing that property revert back to the state that it was in, that we just spent close to $100,000 to clean up, and thank you Garfield County, they spent most of that money. Would council be interested in asking our city attorney to help move this conversation forward? Because in the I've spoken to a couple of the parties, and it seems like we are very close. It would seem that it's doable. So is council amenable to having our city attorney work on bringing those parties together and reaching some kind of agreements, or?
I would like to continue that.
Okay, you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I was gonna say, just Shelley, you spoke to me earlier today, and I think, as long as we don't take ownership, we don't task Brian. He can't even afford carpet in his rec center, for goodness sake. Apparently we can't either. But I'm very sensitive to that, and even if we don't have ownership, but if we can get other partnerships like Roaring Fork Outdoors and the mountain bike group, and to do the trails, and we just are like the legal liability protection, and we have dog bags, that's kind of the extent of it, and we get carpet in the rec center, then I'm supportive of continuing that conversation.
Carpet's a trail. Okay, so is that enough direction?
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
I'm gonna drag Deborah along, because people like her.
Okay, yeah.
People do like her.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I would make that motion.
Moved by Tony, seconded by Paula. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up is our proclamation for Zeus, the K-9 unit. And with Zeus, is Zeus's handler here? Come on up. If you're the designated person to do this.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to set this here. I just want to start off by saying this, all this framing and engraving is from Bear Tree Woodworking out of Newcastle, who donated this. So it is the American flag. I'll present that to you. Whereas Zeus was born October 20th, 2008. Zeus is a German Shepherd, Belgium, Malinois, thank you, mix imported from Slovenia, and joined the police department in 2010. He was trained and owned by Glenwood Springs Police Department officer Blake Gobo. And whereas Zeus was a valuable member of the Glenwood Springs Police Department, and during his career had over 100 arrests, including the numerous criminals who surrendered immediately upon hearing Zeus coming to search for them. He has been deployed to assist several agencies within Garfield County, which included over 220 departments throughout his career. 2019, Officer Gobo and Zeus were named K-9 Team of the Year, Best Patrol Arrest by the Colorado Police K-9 Association. This was for the apprehension of a suspect with multiple felony warrants for charges of assaulting a police officer and felony menacing. He was located hiding in a residence closet, concealed with blankets, and apprehended. Most notably was his involvement a week before his retirement in West Glenwood. He assisted in apprehending an armed domestic violence suspect. Previous convicted felon had been threatening to kill a significant other by displaying 2 knives and threatening suicide by cop after a search and track with other officers. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Police Department has benefited from Zeus's work by using his keen smell to locate suspects who conceal themselves while sparing officers from dangerous and oftentimes intensive searches. Whereas Zeus retired from full service April 22nd, 2021, and will continue to live with his handler and family. Zeus is cared for as an integral member of the family. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Police Department has lost a valuable member and resource in keeping our officers and community members safe. Now therefore I, Jonathan Godis, Mayor of the City of Glenwood Springs, and on behalf of the entire City Council as Mayor, We wish to express our sincere appreciation to Zeus for his dedication and service to the citizens of Glenwood Springs.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say a couple of words. First off, I want to say thank you to the police department, city council, everybody that's here, and then all the other people that have worked with us and helped with us. You know, our success wouldn't be achieved without everybody. Work-wise, Zeus was a great canine. He worked 11 out of the 12 years that he was on Earth here with us. He passed away in May 5th. Just did awesome work, you know, as the mayor mentioned, in assisting in arrests, getting drugs off the street, and interacting with our youth in a positive way. And then also at home, he was a huge pillar at home. Developed a close relationship with my daughter, and kind of when he wasn't feeling so good later on, it was kind of cool to see him kind of, when I was still going into work, kind of just taking on that home role and fulfilling that. So that was awesome to see. Think about him every day. He's the best partner a man could ask for, and even a better, closer best friend. So I appreciate all the support, and I'm happy with what we did, and excited and proud of what Zeus was able to do. He's one of a kind. So that's all I got.
Thank you. And our condolences. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, Jeff. Bye, Tom Hershey. All right, item number 12, planning item 2021, consideration of a major site architectural plan review application for the construction of 40-unit multifamily development in a single building. Grab the applicant. While you're doing that, I'm monitored now, but I could look at.
Well, man. Oh, thank you.
If there's anything.
We all.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about it.
She's okay. It's been a fun, success story. I'm starting off our workforce is never. Look back there.
Thank you so much. Hannah Klausman, with Community Development Department, presenting the major site and architectural plan for planning file 2021, Mountain View Plat. You, Mayor, Council. The current proposal before you is a 3- and 4-story building. Has different roof heights there, as you can see, on a 1.3-acre lot. The proposal is 40 apartment units comprising 14 one-bedroom units and 26 two-bedroom units. It also includes private common areas on the grounds, including internal bike storage as well as outdoor, ski lockers, a meeting room, and also a pet spa. This is zoned in our mixed-use corridor, or M1 district. I've included some images there of the surrounding area. So this is very close to the 114 exit in West Glenwood, directly north of the Discount Tire property. And as you can see in the zoning image, the entire area is zoned mixed-use corridor. I provided you a summary of our code standards to give you a quick snapshot. There are no variances being requested for this application. So all of the code standards that you see here, open space, landscape, parking lot landscaping included, our setbacks, our building height, parking, bike parking,
trash enclosure, architectural elements, storage, and also our new inclusionary zoning affordable housing requirements have been met. I'll pull out a few of these just to talk about really quickly. On the parking side, as this is always a hot topic, you can see our code standard there of approximately 1.7 spaces per unit. That includes the guest parking. This particular applicant did apply for an administrative parking reduction. So 68 spaces would have been required for this project, and with the administrative reduction by 5 units, they are providing 63 spaces. So approximately 1.575 spaces per unit. To get the administrative parking reduction, they did point out in their application that they're within the 750 feet of an active transit stop, and they're also providing significantly more bike parking, the 20 long-term and 16 short-term, over the requirement, which is only 6 spaces for development of this size. Also on the affordable housing inclusionary zoning requirement, they turned in their application after that went into effect, so they are abiding by the 20% resident occupied and 10% affordability deed restricted, as outlined in their application. In any one of these, you guys can ask questions and I can elaborate further, but I'm going to keep this short. I did include the image here of what the building is going to look like, along with the proposed materials. To give you an idea, it does meet all of the architectural element requirements of our our residential building design standards from the code. And they've included some stone veneer, metal siding, in addition to, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. As accents, there we go, as accents to their building material, which is allowed for in our code. Very quickly on their traffic and access, the one thing I did want to highlight for you that is outlined in their traffic report is that the project is anticipated to add more than 20% traffic growth, which requires them to submit for a CDOT access permit, and they will be held to the standards of CDOT requirements when that comes back. I believe the applicant has been in discussions with CDOT and has submitted or is very close to submitting that access permit, so they will be held to whatever access requirements that CDOT needs for this particular intersection. So the criteria for your review tonight for a major site and architectural plan review, I've included here. Staff has found all these conditions to be met. The site and architectural plan is consistent with the purpose and intent of this code. The site and architectural plan is consistent with the dimensional, design, development, and all other standards of this code, as I outlined in that brief summary. Site and architectural plan is consistent with any other previously approved plats, PUDs, or land use approvals. There are none indicated. The site and architectural plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted city plans and policies. So for this one, I pulled out our future land use map of our current comprehensive plan. The property is outlined there in red. You can see that it is occurring in our mixed use designation and abuts the brown, which is a multifamily residential, which is the predominant use that surrounds this property. So staff did find it to be in compliance with our comprehensive plan and city policies. So your only action item tonight, you have the option to approve with conditions, deny, or continue. Staff and Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending approval of the major site and architectural plan. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a 7 vote in favor, so that was a unanimous consideration. During that discussion with the commission, they did have some recommendations for the applicant, which are outlined in your staff report that the applicant was amenable to and made those changes to their site plan prior to coming tonight. You have a addendum in your attachments, which were the outlined changes that the applicant made. Those include a revised landscape plan that's illustrating the requested change to the site, showing realignment of the sidewalk running on the west edge of the property, some revisions to the retaining wall layout, the addition of tables and seating with a gas grill added to the landscape plan. And that is the majority of that. So with that, I will open it up to any questions. And also the applicant is here and online, so we will likely need to promote some people when that comes up. Thank you.
Quick question. When you said pet spa, is that like, what's that, the meadows where they have like a vet, is that for public use or what is that?
It would not be for public use, and the applicant actually has a slide. They've done this on other properties, and it's been wildly popular.
And they're gonna show that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Good.
Oh,
Knock yourself out. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm muffled as it is.
I noticed in, thank you, Hannah, appreciate it. I noticed in some of the drawings and stuff and some of the comments were on it, I had to kind of really squint to see them, but there was, as part of the parking lot, it showed that they would be using some of that parking area for snow storage, and we are already looking at less parking than was mandated. So how was that resolved? Did they decide to add parking to accommodate for winter parking? Because I know there's no off-street parking.
So in our code, actually up to 10% of your parking can be used for snow storage. So that's on any development across the board. So getting the administrative parking reduction actually doesn't impact that particular code item. They have also identified landscape areas where they will likely put snow storage first, with the parking being for those wonderful fluffy powder gears that we all want.
Yes, and they are coming back, aren't they?
Coming back.
Thank you for that guarantee. I have another question. So there is no off-street parking, is that correct? So they are just limited to what parking is in that parking area?
It's only off-street parking.
Only off-street
I
parking?
think what you're referring to is there's no on-street parking available around that particular
Okay,
property.
right.
So they're a little set back from Highway 6, and so they are surrounded by other uses, and so they're providing all of their required parking with the administrative adjustment as allowed by code on site.
Okay. And then I'm a little confused about the additional bike storage as part of that, the argument that, okay, well, this will accommodate some of those parking space needs, because I'm a bike rider, but I don't ride my bike between December and March. It's just a little hairy out there to do a skinny tired bike. So I have a difficulty having that justification, although I do really appreciate that there are all those biking spaces. Is that what I'm to understand, that all those additional parking spaces is supposed to accommodate for lack of parking?
So in our administrative parking adjustment section of the code, there's 6 or 7 aspects that you can get your parking reduced by, with a maximum reduction percentage of 30%. So this applicant only asked for a 7% reduction from what they were required. So from 68 spaces to 63 spaces, 7% reduction. And it can be proximity to transit is one of them, additional bike parking beyond what is required. And there's an equation for so many bike spaces, you get 1 space accommodation. So they actually ended up being far beyond what they needed to only reduce it by 5 spaces. They could just only rely on the traffic proximity to meet that requirement.
Okay.
But so they were going a little bit above and beyond. I understand.
Right.
Winter biking is not necessarily my thing as well, but.
Okay. And one last question, just so I understand this. One of the other packet pieces was a concern from the fire marshal about the turning radius and the grade aspects within the parking lot. Was that resolved? Did that get taken care of?
Yes. The fire marshal made that comment very on in our application process, and so they accommodated that with the hammerhead parking aspect, where the dumpster is on one end, the eastern portion of the property there, which is accommodating for our fire truck structures.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
I just want a clarification that this is just a considering the major site plan, architectural plan review, meaning that the applicant will be coming back again with any outstanding items that we need to review, kind of more of an in-depth review. This is just kind of a big picture.
No, this is our in-depth review.
Okay.
So
Okay.
approving, denying, or conditions you want to add, this would be.
Might go. Thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Good clarification point. I know we have a lot of application processes.
Starting to blow our minds.
Yes.
I just had a quick question on the landscape plan. It looks like it's going to be that kind of a crushed rock around. So is there irrigation then to keep the trees alive? Because I see there's quite a few trees around, but just to make sure those are healthy and growing. And do we in the city code require some type of a time frame where those trees need to be established and kept alive?
We have a time frame in the code, and I believe the applicant can clarify on their irrigation plans, because there is a plan for that.
Okay, okay.
Currently.
Great.
But definitely there is something in code that you have to, I believe it's 12 months for establishment of the landscape.
Okay, and then do we know anything about the energy efficiency level and performance of the building?
I'm going to leave that to the applicant as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The applicant want to, right? I thought so.
They don't have anything.
I'm going to pull up their short presentation, and we need to promote Mike Surek,
So are you doing that?
also Rhonda Shrewsbury, and Bruce Berry, Anthony Alfini, Greg Schrader, and anyone else, if you're out there and want to be promoted, please, please raise your hand. Large.
Promote everybody.
Those are the people I really need.
So this is the presentation from the applicant, that I believe Mike is going to start off with, or?
I might just go to one of the first slides for Mike to go ahead and, let Mike can control things.
I don't believe he can, actually, so.
I'll just step up if that's okay.
Yep.
Great. So my name is Doug Pratt with the Land Studio. I'll just introduce us very quickly. Julie and I are both here. We both worked on this project with Real America. So the Real America folks are online. Rhonda and Mike will be giving kind of an overview of their company, which I think is important for you. So you can see this is Real America on the screen here. As you can see, they're developers, contractors, architects, and property managers. So they take their, in this case, this multifamily project through the whole process, and they manage the project when it's complete. So they have some history of work that they've done in the Roaring Fork Valley, which I'll let them talk about, which I think you'd be interested in. And they are actually at a conference in Indiana, Affordable Housing Conference tonight, so they're presenting from there. So we've done a lot of work in Indiana, Indianapolis area. I'll let them talk about that too. But with that, Mike or Rhonda, if you want to get on and just kind of introduce Real America a little bit, and then we can work on the project.
Yes, hi, this is Mike Surratt. Can you all hear me?
We can. It sounds good, Mike.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. As Doug said, we our biggest week of the year is actually this week in Indiana for the Indiana Affordable Housing Conference. And I was actually planning on being there in person, but also had a slight minor medical emergency, which kept me here in Indianapolis. But I do appreciate you allowing us to log in virtually. And so on behalf of Rhonda Shrewsbury, who's our president and CEO, I thank you for our time here. My name is Mike Surratt. I'm a development associate. And as Doug mentioned, we're a vertically integrated real estate company. We have development, general contracting, construction, design, and property management in-house. To date, we've done nearly 40 residential multifamily developments. Rhonda Shrewsbury founded our company in 1995. We are about 95% of our business is affordable multifamily development, and that was actually our intention with this development through the tax credit program. We unfortunately did not get funding from CHAFA, but we do see the demand for housing in the region, and our goal with Mountain View Flats is to build attainable market rate housing at this location. And so I'm trying to see the slides here, but if you want to keep going on, so in addition to residential. We have branched out and done a little bit of self-storage development, medical office, and some mixed use. And then within our residential portfolio, some of that is historic renovation or preservation of older, existing buildings. Here's a sample of just some of the projects that we've done. Most, all but the one, the second row in the middle, our new construction. That one in the middle is a historic renovation deal of a 1920s building in downtown South Bend that we preserved and converted into market rate apartments. I'm going to keep going on. Just a summary: we've done over 2,500 units, over 300 million in total development costs. Fortunately, even through the pandemic, we've maintained an occupancy rate across our whole portfolio of over 97%, which we're proud of. And we do manage everything that we build. Just another sample of some of our properties. Keep going. And so Roaring Fork Apartments, you may recognize this building in Basalt. This is actually the only property in our portfolio that is outside of the state of Indiana. And it actually was an opportunity that our president, Rhonda Shrewsbury, came about. She owns a condo in Snowmass Village, and through being in the valley, talking with people, getting to know, those who live and work in the valley, she's actually friends with the owner of Stubby's bar in Basalt. And this was an opportunity that was originally planned to be a hotel. And during the recession, she found an opportunity to purchase the property and worked closely with Chaffa and the city of Basalt to ultimately build a 56-unit mixed income development of affordable apartments and market rate apartments. And so we'll show you a few pictures of this deal. You want to keep going on. So we have 12 market rate units, and the balance are affordable. One reason why we do see the demand firsthand in the valley for housing is that we currently have a waiting list of over 230 households at Roaring Fork Apartments. Some of the amenities, which will be very similar to what we're doing at Mountain View Flats, is the pet spa, as we mentioned, is essentially a dog wash station. We understand the importance of the needs of people's pets, and we've seen firsthand the popularity with this, along with the bike storage room, which is consistently used and full. So this is a list of some of the other amenities that we have at that building. Keep going. So with Mountain View Flats, Hannah kind of summarized what we're doing here. 40 units, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. The unique thing about the way that we laid out the building and designed is that each unit will have either a patio or a balcony with south-facing views, hence the name Mountain View Flats. I'm going to keep going. Location, she touched on this as well, but being in such close proximity to 2 raft bus stops, we see this as being ideal as a infill residential development that those who work and live in Glenwood Springs can benefit from. Again, we've summarized this kind of already, but what we're excited about the opportunity, and again, to kind of touch on our passion is affordable housing, and unfortunately we weren't awarded the tax credits for this opportunity, but we are determined to find additional opportunities within the city of Glenwood Springs to address this dire need. And we think that this, this first Mountain View Flats development is a great stepping stone to do that. So again, thank you for the time. We're really excited about this opportunity, and we look forward to being a part of the Glenwood Springs community.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm going to talk about some of the planning aspects of this very quickly. I think Hannah went over it very well, but this site plan that you see on the right is an early version. So I'll show you an updated slide, but the Planning and Zoning Commission made some great observations. They said, your sidewalks don't go all the way through, so if people want to travel north-south along the access road, would you do that? So I'll show you, we've made some modifications so that people coming from the residential property to the north can connect all the way through this site down to the intersection of the Discount Tire driveway, and below that driveway, there's a sidewalk that connects to the 6th Street corridor pedestrian access, and then in both directions to RAFTA stops. So anyway, this is an early version. I just wanted to point out some of the changes that we had made. Again, there are 1 and 2 bedroom units associated with this project, 14 and 26, 14 1 bedroom, 26 2 bedroom. And again, the list of amenities that are associated with those units. We had put together a number of revisions since we started working with staff on this project. We originally had a 4-story building consistent across the length of this at 54 units. In terms of parking and massing, it just seemed too much. So we integrated 3- and 4-story levels to try and break up the roof, break up the massing a bit, jog it in and out, both front and back. So that was one of the modifications we made. So the overall length of the building was revised. We did reduce parking as well because we reduced the number of units. And as Hannah had said, based on our proximity to transit and the additional bicycle parking both inside and outside, we could have asked for up to 30%. Not to say that we would get it, but we asked for 7% reduction in parking to accommodate accommodate the 40 units and also leave some room for landscape and things that we think are important on the site and that are also required. So we added an entry door that faces out to the access area. We added a sidewalk extension, again, which I talked about, which we'll show you in a minute. We also included the 8 deed-restricted resident occupied units that we've been discussing. So with that, this is a revised landscape plan. I'm going to point out a couple of things that I haven't talked about yet. So we did realign the sidewalk. So we have a sidewalk running the length of the property. There's an additional sidewalk piece that we need to get permission from the neighbor from Discount Tire to access to their driveway, so we can do a crosswalk and access the crosswalk across that. So I'll show that to you in a second. Regarding irrigation, we do have notes on the irrigation plan that all of the plant materials that are in the crushed granite or cobble areas will be drip irrigated, better irrigation system in general than kind of spray irrigation, but those will be permanent underground systems. They can be adjusted per the needs of the plant materials, so they'll be zoned separately from some of the higher water using areas, because if you're doing drip and cobble and crushed granite, it just uses less water. So it'll be, the irrigation will be organized that way. We have also added a crushed granite area at the entrance outside of the community room with picnic tables and a gas grill. So that wasn't illustrated on our plan at the Planning and Zoning Commission, so we've since added that. And we've also updated the retaining wall on the south side. We had 2 4-foot terrace retaining walls, but the terraces did not have the required jogs in the retaining wall every 30 feet. So rather than having a long wall with no jogs in it, the bottom 4 feet has a 2-foot inset every 30 feet. And where it's outset, there will be plant materials that screen the upper wall, and then the lower wall will have kind of the jogs in and out to accommodate the requirements in the code. I know I'm doing hand motions and talking graphics here, but this is a little bit of a better illustration just of how the sidewalks work and the open space areas on the site, just to see the balance of landscaped area. We've got islands for planting in the parking lot, not required these days by the city of Glenwood, but it'll give some shade, I think, to the vehicles in the parking lot, and also the sidewalk connections that we talked about. So with that, it's kind of a quick presentation, but I will hand it back over, and we're available for questions or however you would like to proceed.
Any questions?
Are you familiar, in our area, we have Garfield Clean Energy, and we have an organization called Clear, and they'll come out and they'll revise, like, kind of review your plans with you. I thought I was. And I'm the one who said to be louder. Yeah. Have you contacted them, or would you be receptive to contacting them just to see if they had any suggestions or?
Bruce Berry is the architect for Real America. I mean, he's part of the Real America team,
Yeah.
and he's actually part of our virtual representation. So maybe if we could promote him to let him speak about the energy efficiency.
That'd be great. Thanks.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
And then maybe more specifically, he could we can talk about Clear. I certainly know who they are and have worked with them. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, Bruce, if you could talk about the energy efficiency of the building and the standards that you've met with it. I'm not sure that he's on.
Chuck, are you on? Could you maybe speak to the energy efficiency features?
Actually, I was hoping Bruce would speak about those, but is it possible to get Bruce on so he can kind of run through it with us as we kind of proceed? What do you think, Mike?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chuck Bowen. I'm a project architect with Real America. Unfortunately, Bruce had a pre-arrangement this evening, so I'm here to kind of field any questions that you guys may have. So in regard to the energy efficiency question, we have not established a set rule for that yet, but we are very receptive. I mean, since this is a market rate, we are going to design to, at the very minimum, at the very least, a code minimum, but we are receptive to hear what you guys have to say.
And you would be receptive, I added that to it as a condition.
To reach out to Clear and work with Clear on energy efficiency?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we'd be very receptive to that.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Oh, not a question.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Any questions from? Hold on. I guess we'll open it out to public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Yes.
I think somebody online.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you could promote them, that'd be great. I've given up all control to Alyssa, so I do not have any of this.
Arlene, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, hi.
Arlene?
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, hi. My name is Carlene Clark. I live in West Glenwood on Melray. I have several questions and I'm not sure whom will answer those, and several concerns. The developer had mentioned, compliance with our comp plan. As we all know, the comp plan is out of date. And so I'm not sure that comparing against that really means much to us. The traffic study taken, I'm wondering if it's comparing itself to the 214 Center Drive project and how the two projects are interacting together, because we already don't feel safe in having the ability to exit from West Glenwood during an emergency. They talked about the 1.57 car spots. I don't believe that's actually enough. I know of other places around town where people have 3, 4, and 5 or more cars, even though they're actually right next to a bus stop. So a bus stop does not mean that people won't actually have cars and need those additional parking spots. And we already recognize that people in West Glenwood do not feel safe with the current needs that come up with evacuation, and we've exceeded the road infrastructure. So how does this fit in with that? I just want to know how this is really going to work in comparison with the 214 Center Drive project. And I know, we keep hearing over and over that we have a housing need, but when does that housing need to be, or why would it exceed the safety of the current residents? Because I don't believe we're safe today. And I would like to hear that addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlene. Is anybody else, Alyssa? Okay. Do the applicant like to respond to any of those concerns or questions?
So we have prepared an access permit, as Hannah had said. the number of vehicles utilizing the current intersection of the private access drive and Highway 6 and 24 exceeds 20%. So we do have an access permit prepared. It's been coordinated with CDOT. It hasn't been submitted because we kind of want to hear, what this group has to say about the project. But we meet the standards in the CDOT code for access to Highway 6 and 24. And traffic has been a concern. We have analyzed it. We have looked at the numbers. We know that we need an access permit, and we'll be proceeding with the requirements from CDOT to have a safe intersection of that private access drive and Highway 6 and 24. So that's the access. The parking, really at one point when we were looking at a full 4-story building with 57 units, we had received a parking adjustment of 20%. So we had actually worked with staff, gotten that allowance of a 20% reduction. We decided it was a big reduction. We decided the massing was a bit much for the site, so we reduced it for 40 units, came back with a 7% reduction. We also recognized the need for parking. We did get a 20% reduction, but we decided to reduce the density and reduce the request for reduction in parking as a result of kind of our analysis of the site. So I think many of the concerns that you just heard, we looked at in relationship to this site in particular and decided to take a different track, and that's kind of the product that you're seeing right now. This use is an allowed use within the zone district, and it's considered an infill project, which is kind of promoted in the comp plan. I know I'm not hitting all of the comp plan standards with this discussion, but infrastructure is there, and kind of infill is kind of a piece of the comp plan that is important. This is an infill project of multifamily with access to 6 and 24, and we've tried to look at all of those safety and parking concerns that kind of you just heard from this public comment.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Doug, for being here tonight, presenting. Can you give me any sense of, I think you had mentioned earlier, or Hannah had mentioned earlier, somebody that ownership was usually retained by these developers. Has there ever been a time when they went to condominiumization or something like that? I'm just concerned that we'll approve this with the affordable housing and rental and that type of thing, and then all of a sudden it turns into a different kind of property.
I might let Mike respond, but I'll kick it off with, we have not, obviously anything like that has to pursue a subdivision application with the city of Glenwood Springs. So condominiumization is subdivision, so I think, Gretchen, much as you, is that right, Ingrid, sorry. I'm sorry.
And Doug,
yeah, go ahead.
This is Mike. That's definitely not our intent with this. We've never done that in the past, and we are long-term owners, operators, managers, and that's our full intent with this property, to keep it as a rental property within our ownership for the long term.
And so similar to Roaring Fork Apartments, is that the same kind of setup? Okay, great.
Correct.
Thank
yes.
you.
Any other questions? All right, I guess we did close the public hearing. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple follow-up points from staff. Doug had mentioned the earlier parking reduction on their initial project, which was much larger. So the administrative parking reduction on that was 20%, but it was also predicated on a lease requirement that restricted the 1 bedrooms to 1 car. Just wanted to point that out so you guys understand some of the components that go into the administrative decisions on those parking reductions. And then also to Paula's question, if this project, I'm not saying it would, but if down the line, if it condominiumized and we went through that subdivision process, they would still be required on those affordable housing units, so they will not go away. That's in the agreement, and so if it changed to for sale units, they'd actually be required to make those affordable housing for sale. Anyways, just wanted to point those two things out. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. All right, I'll bring it back to council for a motion or further discussion.
In planning item 070-060-030G1B, major site architectural plan, I'll make a motion to approve based on the findings and conditions referenced in our staff report with the additional condition of having a dialogue with Clear.
Go for comments?
Yeah, comments are great.
Okay.
Further comments? Go ahead, Paul.
I appreciate the person that called in and spoke to, you know, what we're looking at in another area of town and in this area. And we've approved other developments around town, and I have to say, there are some concerns. I'm concerned about traffic, and I would like to see that we do what we can, because I think we do have a problem in West Glenwood on Highway 6 and 24 in safety and evacuation. And I think it should be a central concern of all of the city council, and whatever this development can do to mitigate that would be important to me. So as you consider filing for that with CDOT, please keep that in consideration. I don't know if it's working with the city and finding out what that evacuation plan is, if there's one in place, and how that you can help with that. That would be huge. But I do have to say, the one thing that I really appreciate about this particular development is, for the first time in a number of developments, I'm seeing a development come through that says, we have 2-bedroom apartments. And that's been one of my biggest fights on this continual approval of developments, is we're not showing space for families and anything larger than a studio and a 1-bedroom apartment in a number of these developments. And I just really appreciate this opportunity that not only are the 1-bedroom apartments going to have some deep restriction, but we're going to have 2-bedroom, and that's a place that families can live. And that means a lot to me. So I just want to applaud you for that, and applaud you for being there and allowing this opportunity for affordable housing at a different level.
Thanks, Paula. And I would also like to speak to the comment that was, the public comment that we received about the safety and evacuation. Council is very aware of that problem, and in fact, staff has been working with other partners in the area to work on evacuation plans for various parts of town. We're aware of the safety concerns with being able to evacuate if we have a fast-moving fire or some other natural disaster. So that's something that I'm certainly looking to see, regardless of these new developments coming in. I think it's something that we have needed to have in place, and we're becoming more painfully aware of that as we see more impacts of the drought and climate change and affecting our wildfire behavior around the city. So that's something that I'm hoping we're going to see come forward regardless of these developments, but it's certainly needed. And then as far as the energy efficiency, it's one thing to have a condition on there just to have a conversation with Clear. I would like to up the game on that. And I don't know about putting a specific target on there, but I don't think it's out of the question to maybe put a target to have an Energy Star rated type of project. Or there's also a program under Department of Energy for Better Buildings, which has a lot of standards for multifamily buildings. So I guess I would like to up the ante on that beyond just a conversation.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever conditions we put on to the applicant, potentially, we'd be very specific. So conversations maybe not specific, and a star rating is not very specific.
Right, right.
If you may.
Two things. One, I hate to do this to you, but you don't actually have the ability to impose that condition. Because there's no variant, I don't have a discretionary act to tie it to, but what you can do, which I think is, and I know Doug and don't know his whole team, but I've known Doug for a long time, so I'm sure he would be committed to this, is that a condition that the project use best practices regarding energy efficiency and make an attempt to be make an attempt to be 100% renewable using city electric.
Mm-hmm.
So I would revise my motion, second it in order to apply that, but
Okay.
why don't you, is that
I think that's okay to say current best practices for energy efficiency of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Point of order. Aren't they going to be on city electric?
They are, but how you do that, whether you try to go to 100% and not use natural gas, and how you build units and things like that for both heating and what's being used in the kitchen and all of that, to try to achieve as close to 100% renewable for the project using city electric is what I was going after.
And
Just so everybody knows, we're 100% electric renewable.
if I may chime in for 1 second, you guys were addressing the best practices, and if I wasn't clear, that is our intention to exercise the best practices regarding energy efficiency. But in addition to what Mike was saying as well, our bread and butter, 80+% of our projects are all tax credit housing, where it's a condition for us to meet Energy Star efficiency. So we are very familiar with that process, and it's something we're very comfortable executing.
Okay, fantastic.
So I wanted to echo what, I was going to say Shelley, what Paula and Shelley said, but mostly Paula, that, I don't want to speak to Paula to any other projects, and I heard one person just comment, which is quite a contrast to some other things. I think what that shows is the difference in projects and the difference of projects within the urban growth boundary within the city of Glenwood and other things in projects that might be more appropriately sized. But I certainly share the concerns that that person raised. That being said, I'm going to support Ingrid's motion with the amendments. I think this is a good project, and I want to thank the applicant. Thank you. Yes. And that little talking stick is a COVID hazard.
Ingrid?
Yeah.
I had a request from an audience member that you use your outsourced voice.
Oh, I need to speak up even though I can't. Okay. So
Clarify the motion potentially.
Perfect, I will. I just wanted to visit about the comp plan. So often that comp plan is addressed or referenced, and I did say that, so often an overview of that document is that it's a vision and goal for the city's future, right? And we do update it. And having been very familiar with it, I anticipate that even when we do update it, there'll be quite a few items on it that are consistent with the current one. But the way this works is kind of like tax code. We file our taxes based on the working document that we currently have. I don't say, well, I heard next year the child tax credit is going to be greater, and so I'm not going to file my taxes this year, or I'm going to do it in accordance with that. These are documents that we have agreed to incorporate into our community, and they're guiding documents until the next one is approved, similar to tax code. So what we have right now is what I am making decisions on. Just like the municipal code, that is also approved, and it's what we're using. And if that changes, then we will move accordingly. But until it is, what we have is what we will be using. And so the comp plan that we have now is the document that I will use this evening to make a decision. And it says that we support infill and that we need affordable housing. And this project supports both of those. So, thank you.
Can you clarify your motion?
Oh, clarify my motion.
With our revision?
Yeah, so ultimately, I'm actually going to just reference Carl's language about best practices. So I'll remove my last condition regarding clear and add on Carl's recommendations to apply best practices. And
Yeah, I think what I suggested was that the project shall utilize best practices regarding energy efficiency and attempt to achieve 100% renewable primarily through the use of city electric.
Perfect, because I wouldn't have been able to say exactly that, so. And then Steve, will you amend your second?
I'd certainly be interested to hearing from the applicant that might be an acceptable thing for them.
They did say that.
They did.
Well, they didn't say that they would be accepting, total electric.
It's not a demand that they have to do it. It's really an aspirational condition so that they understand what the intent of council is with regard to energy efficiency within the community.
Okay. Well, I would amend my second. Or I would accept your amended.
Would you like to comment on it?
No.
Okay.
No.
No other comments? Ryan, call the question.
Counselor Wusso.
Yes.
Counselor Stepp.
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Godus.
No.
Counselor Kaut.
Yes.
It passes 6-1.
5-1?
5-1. Yeah, that's right. We're missing one.
Not 6-1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for,
Entertaining in more ways than
All right, next item is the award of a contract for planning services for the comprehensive plan update and appointment of a project steering committee. The committee.
Committee or commission?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to present the request for an award of contract for planning services for the comprehensive plan to Cushing Terrell for project cost not to exceed $213,000, which is slightly over budget. We had identified $200,000 for the project. $100,000 of that is coming from an award that we received from the Department of Social Affairs, which has a stipulation in the grant that the city must award and finalize the contract within 90 days of the grant award, which would be October 7th. And with that, I'm open to any questions you have. Actually, I should probably mention the steering committee. We had identified that the planning commission would be the bulk of the steering committee for the project, and that we would have a limit for how many, just so that it didn't have so many cooks in the kitchen. But we wanted to have somebody representing development, the development field, somebody representing the Latino community, a young person, millennial or Generation Z stakeholder, and then another person recommended by City Council. And that's it. That's all I have. Open to any questions that you may have.
Do you have a suggestion on who we would recommend, or a type of person?
I think we can come back with that. I think what we wanted to do is take your temperature on if that looks like a good steering committee, and we can come back with some specific folks.
Any questions?
Good recommendation. She's looking for one other as recommended by City Council.
Yes, I think she said we'd come back to us for that
Yeah, she
recommendation.
can come back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right?
But if you have a suggestion, we're
We're going to put one other stakeholder. I think we should put somebody in like the retiree committee, because I don't think you have anyone on planning on that.
Have you met someone?
Yeah, I think somebody is like, someone different than someone who's wonderful and we so valuable. But he's pretty active, so.
And I think to that point.
Someone in a wheelchair.
I was thinking of the same thing, well, two things. Either someone representing our senior community, because we really don't have a lot, for senior housing or aging in place type housing, those types of things. The other thing I was thinking of was, maybe someone from the business community that's interested in housing for their employees.
smaller note, I was thinking that middle range, like school districts, hospitals, those kind of people that employ people in our area and are interested in the development of our area. So these are just ideas you can bring back to us in a couple of weeks, or throw at you and throw back at us.
Just to, Ingrid's point, you might check with Judy Martin from County Senior Services. There's a lot of people she knows and boards. A lot of those seniors want to be active and give information. Not my mom.
Now make your money.
No, don't know.
All right, any other questions for staff? I'll make a motion then to approve the award of contract for planning services for the comprehensive plan update.
Second.
And moved by myself, seconded by Tony Hershey. I want to make it clear.
Oh, yeah.
Hold it back. Between Ryan and I, we'll get this votes down. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 6-0.
Thank you. Exciting to get that done. Get going.
Yes, good idea.
Number 14, Bill Board appointments. Is this you, Council Hershey?
It is.
Okay.
Well, we interviewed two people. And I talked to Deborah about this. You remember, were you on the council too when I wrote a letter when I was assistant?
Nope.
Complaining about someone who was sitting, I think, on the financial advisory board. And you guys, I think Steve Davis was certainly there. And I had some concerns and she left. She was one of the people who applied. And frankly, I interviewed her. We were very polite. I just can't recommend her. And it's not because of that incident. It's just that I think she's had some trouble and maybe somebody else wants to echo that with getting along with people and with boards. The incident that occurred with me was with regards to the farmer's market, and I wasn't even an elected official or anything. And I think I'm allowed to voice my opinion, and Cindy was not respectful of that. And I wrote a letter to you, and she was removed.
So, Councilor Hershey,
Yes.
can I just assume that you would recommend the one candidate and not the other?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be,
No,
but I'm just sensitive to what happened the other night when we were here late. And anyone who wants to serve on a board, I'm very respectful of, and anyone who wants to volunteer their time, I just don't think she would good. So I do recommend that other candidate who we did interview, but not her. I will say the Vail Board is desperate for people. We meet very early on the mornings, one Monday a month, and it's hard to find people, but it's a very important board. Thank you. I can make that motion to approve.
So the motion by Tony, the seconded by Shelley, is to approve Joyce Jenkins to the Vail Board.
We don't have to say anything for the other.
But you pretty much just did.
Well, no, in terms of the motion, it's what
Okay.
council.
And then I think it's important to bring that up,
Okay.
because.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I can eat.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thanks.
Next item, the detox update and budget request.
I might need that later.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council folks. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Sharon Raggio. Deb Wild, who has been kind of your point person on planning for this project, is on a vacation, and she asked me to come and meet with this esteemed group to talk a little bit about where we're at this point and what the plans are looking like. Thank you. So my name is Sharon Raggio. I'm the CEO of Mind Springs Health. We are looking at a potential withdrawal management program on a Mind Springs Health location, which is up by the 27th Street Bridge. This county last had a withdrawal management program back in 2010, and despite multiple conversations, there was really no community consensus or shared vision. And the biggest challenge to that was the location. And so this appears to be really an ideal location for lots and lots of reasons. I know the city's, some of the city's zoning folks have come and walked through the location, et cetera. So this has been going on. There is now a shared vision and a community consensus. Approximate cost to remodel the facility that Mind Springs owns is about $400,000. Might be a little bit higher depending on what a sewer line looks like. You may have read in the Post-Independent that the county has approved to request a grant from the ARPA funding from the State Office of Behavioral Health to help pay for the renovation. And that grant, if awarded, would in fact likely cover all of the renovation. Startup costs are approximately $75,000 to $125,000. That's kind of your hiring, recruitment, training. People have to have certain credentials, and likely the right candidates would not be available who have those credentials, and they would need to get some training and achieve those credentials. Mine Springs has a $200,000 grant that potentially could help with that as well. This is a draft pro forma. It is a 5-year plan. You can see kind of the total salaries and food and et cetera. This also includes a mobile recovery team. This is an important component of the program in that this mobile team then follows up with people after a withdrawal episode, and in that manner are more able to make the withdrawal management program not a revolving door, but really to engage people and to help get people into treatment. So you can see the total expenses year over year of this program. As far as revenue, we certainly can bill Medicaid. The State Office of Behavioral Health contributes some funding, as you can see here. Senate Bill 202 is that $200,000 grant I mentioned earlier that is available just only at this moment in time for a couple of years. That may or may not be extended in future years depending on the state budget. So that leaves the offsets, assuming that 6 beds are full. You can see what the gap would be there. This next slide is really what the gap looks like, because it will vary month to month and year to year, because it depends on what your average daily census is. This is presented as an average daily census of 6 versus 5 versus 4, so you can see how the gap changes. I think from the funding perspective, the idea that the funding group has had and Deb has made actionable is to talk to all of the municipalities as well as the 2 hospitals in the county to help contribute to make this achievable and sustainable over time. So let me pause and see if there are questions.
So is that the average daily census, is that the number of beds available?
There would be 8 beds available, and you have to separate men from women, so that's one of the issues. So an average daily census of 6 is what kind of the original pro forma showed. It could go down as low as 4. We did do some data analysis with the 2 hospitals about how many people they believed could be diverted to this kind of a facility versus in their hospital. And it'll probably be between 5 and 6. It'll be in there, but it will vary day to day, month to month.
Okay, but that's based on a projection of the need.
It is based on a projection of the need, based on data that the hospital supplied.
Great.
Yeah.
Other questions? Please continue. Or are you done?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. You said I was going to pause now.
Can I?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was hired, this has been one of the highest goals for city council. You know, it's a high priority in your current strategic vision. Council asked me, I think, about 2.5 years ago to kind of see if we could do this work with Debbie Wild leading the way. I think you've been at probably so many of the very intense meetings we have put on over 2 years. I think what I'm asking you guys to do is take a risk, put ourselves out there first, say we're willing to go up to $200,000 a year. That doesn't mean we would use the $200,000, and if it's not needed, it would fall to reserves for a future use. And then once we have said, okay, we're willing to do whatever we're willing to do, the Valley View Hospital has said they're willing to make a financial commitment, as we do. And then I think, you know, we do a tour and we start asking municipalities in our area what they're willing to contribute. And we see what we can package together. But somebody has to be first. And I'm asking you if we can be first.
Want to do it?
I would like to make a motion that we do approve reserving this funding for up to $200,000 for the opportunity to help pay for operations once the facility is built out. And just for clarification, we've already approved $50,000 for the build out, correct?
You directed me at some point this year in the 2022 budget to put $50,000 in marijuana funds aside in the 2022 budget.
For the build out, okay.
I second the motion.
Further conversation?
I'd like to make a few comments on that. As Deborah said, I've been in numerous meetings on this recovery continuum, and I have to say that the stakeholders involved police officers from Carbondale to Parachute. They involve the county. They involve both hospital districts. They involve input from outside of the county, just with understanding regional need. There's been so many discussions on every level, and the amazing part about this stakeholder group is not only the engagement, but the enthusiasm. And I believe that some of the comments that I heard from different police officers is this is the first time they really felt positive that something was going to happen that needed to be done for a long time. I also want to say financially, I think that this commitment is up to, because I do feel that the Garfield County is going to step in and be a partner in this. Both hospitals are providing in kind as well as monetary contributions. And in our pre-COVID meetings from throughout the county with the different municipalities, we already had some commitment from other cities and towns saying that they wanted to be a part of this. So I just really encourage us continuing to support this. It's a need in our communities, and it will be used throughout the county, but primarily it's a need here in Glenwood Springs. So I encourage you to support this and help us move forward on it.
Thank you, Paul.
You need a second?
Yep.
Did I hear there was?
Shelley did.
Okay, great.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Shelley.
Okay. And then, since we do have Chief Darris here, I'm curious if you would make a comment about how this would impact you and your department.
So thank you.
Yes.
First, I'll say that I've been part of these meetings when I first came to Glenwood Springs, and I do support the concept conceptually. I think it's where it needs to be. My only reservation, this might be somewhere in the weeds and something we could address through an MOU with these other communities that are bringing folks to Glenwood Springs, that they're not bringing a problem here where the person could walk away from this facility and then be a problem in the Glenwood, in that southern community, the residential area down there, because then it's taking resources away from what we're trying to do to deal with the problem that somebody else brought to us. So if we could just address that one specific situation, whether they're required to come and pick up the person they brought to our community or deal with them specifically, that's my only reservation, and I think that could probably be worked out through conversation down the road, again, through an MOU or something. Outside of that, I think that it's a benefit to our community and certainly the population that it's focusing on, for sure. And thank you for asking me what we think.
And I would say, yes, this would require, before this goes off the ground, this will require MOUs, right? It was one of the things that we may eventually ask if the city wants to hold the MOUs with everyone else, but I think that's a little further down the road, and I just right now want to focus on getting the money together, see where there's even any real interest.
Yeah, I guess, I think that this is an appropriate discussion to have with those funds from the marijuana tax monies and Oregon tobacco tax. This kind of, I think this outlined when we passed both those taxes. So I think I'm supportive of that. I do have concerns. I know it's not exactly my ward, but it's my ward adjacent in South Glenwood, and I just don't know if people in my ward would like that kind of thing in my neighborhood. I think it's good for the community, evidently, and it's high in our strategic plan. We've wanted it, but I just don't know for my neighborhood. So I kind of worry about that. I don't like partnerships a lot. I think I would rather just run it, the whole thing. But ultimately, I think it's a good thing, and so I'll be voting to support it.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not aware of the protocol just yet for these meetings, but I'm Deputy Chief Doug Gerald from the Fire Department. Chief Tillotson asked me to come today, and we spoke a little bit as well. I've been a part of the Recovery Continuum Task Force meetings as well since the beginning. And I can just quickly say, from the fire and emergency services standpoint, we frequently run on individuals who are experiencing some state of intoxication and or emotional crisis, and we're stuck, and we can't leave them in their current situation. We're frequently stuck with two choices, jail or the hospital, and neither one is the appropriate place for them in that acute situation. So from an emergency services standpoint, we are supportive of a detox facility, but we also like the direction that it's going as well. It's that entire recovery continuum of now they're in a spot where they can at least get some advice and some counseling on how to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate those comments. I'm frankly very happy to see this partnership go forward. I know there's been a lot of work in it. And I do remember when we had a detox center south of Glenwood Springs for a while, and then it actually moved to right downtown and was in the location where Smoke Restaurant is today for quite a while. And there's always been a concern is, you know, what's been filling that need in the years since that facility went away? And to hear that it's a burden on our emergency department at the hospital or going to jail. And I agree, that's not an appropriate place for people who need immediate help in either mental health or addiction type services. So I think this is a great facility. I'm glad about the partnership with the others involved. Glad, I think this is a priority also for the county, and I'm glad to be working with them and Mine Springs and others, Valley View, on this. So I wholeheartedly support this. It's a great use of our tobacco tax and marijuana funds. Thanks.
I'm good.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Paula, thank you for your hard work on this.
Absolutely.
You've been
Yeah.
a driving force, seriously. And Debbie, thank you.
And Deborah.
And I do want to make a clarification.
And Debbie.
You want me to clarify that last vote prior?
No.
Okay. Well, okay. Nope. Give me a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you not like
Move on down the agenda.
Next one is the Southbridge Jacob Design Contract Amendment.
It is Jacob's the plural. Yes.
Good evening, Council. I'm here to present a request for an amendment to our Jacobs contract for the Southbridge project. We are continuing toward a 90% review with the state. We have made great progress. We have a number of issues that we need to continue our design work on and need additional funding for. We would like to ask the council for an amendment in the amount of $741,382. That amendment would cover a NEPA reevaluation for the project. That would include our bioswales and any other changes that are made to the design as we finish up. The tunnel installation that we've discussed recently with the airport bond measure. The tunnel flare redesign that was, designed to allow trucks to approach from the west side of the project. Landscaping and wall finishes, which I have a presentation that I can show you a little bit what those look like or what they're proposed to be. Changes from the curb and gutter to the bioswale design, we've talked about that a little bit in the past. The Thompson Glen drainage design, we're putting soil nails just below the existing ditch section out there at the Thompson Glen ditch that's on the east side of the project. Holy Cross and Jackson Ranch accommodations. We have had our preliminary discussions with Holy Cross and Jackson Ranch, and they do have requests for us. I think we would hope to be reimbursed for those or to ask those for them to pay for them entirely. We did find collapsible soils, unfortunately, on the east side of the project, and so we do need additional funding to create a performance specification for the job that would specify how the contractor needs to deal with the collapsible soils. Our noise wall design, noise wall was a requirement of the EA. Well, at least the question of a noise wall was a requirement in the EA. And when we did put it to the property owners out there, they did ask. I think there were 11 different units that were asked whether they preferred a noise wall or not. 10 of those 11 owners and tenants came back and said that they did prefer a noise wall. We are thinking that we are going to ask them again because our noise wall is actually shifted a little further to the inside to avoid some utility conflicts. And I do have some graphics that I can show you a little bit about what that looks like or what it could look like. We would like additional funding for right-of-way. We have gone from roughly 26 parcels up to about 48 parcels that we need to acquire or have temporary easements with. So our right-of-way costs have increased dramatically. And this amendment also includes bid support for hopefully a future bid here as we get to the end of this project. The project, right now we are at, our earmark is down to about $541,000. We will spend through that final earmark amount. And then we would supplement that with some of the reserve from the ANI. Steve and I have discussed releasing some of the set-aside in, Southbridge set-aside in the ANI to the amount of $750,000 to cover the remaining balance of the contract. So with that, I will ask if you guys have any questions.
Am I always first?
You always raise your hand.
I do always have questions. Can you just give me kind of a broad picture of why do this now? I mean, we've got a ballot proposal, and we're still trying to figure out if, what direction we're going to go, and do we have the funding for the tunnel? And I just want to know, is this good to do now, or should we be waiting a year or two before we decide this, and why would we do it now?
At this point, I think with this next billing, we'll actually spend through the funds that we have in the contract now. And so without additional funding in the contract, I think we would need to suspend work on the contract until we could authorize additional funds. I would also say that, of these items that are included in the amendment, only one really covers things that are within the bond measure. It's that tunnel insulation. And we did include $200,000 in the bond measure for that tunnel redesign should it pass, and then we would go ahead and do that work. And I wouldn't authorize that work until November, until we had a better read from the citizens as to whether they'll support that bond measure or not. So I do believe it's important to keep working on this project and trying to bring it to a 90% design. We are planning right now to meet CDOT in November and go through the rest of this work and then continue to 100% plan set.
And I'm just trying to go back on I did read this a few days ago, but when I look at this and it says, we have to do an environmental assessment, and I'm looking at doing this project and then paying for these kind of things, and then all of a sudden we change and we're like, okay, well now we need to do a third environmental assessment. Those are the things I fear, is we're paying right now for approving this extra money, and then we may have to approve more money because we change direction.
So a reevaluation is fairly common. I think the Grand Avenue Bridge had 4 different reevaluations, from the time that they finally approved their EA. They're much smaller in scope, both from a cost and a public involvement process. Their intent is to cover things that, weren't included in the original design. And so far, this reevaluation would cover, the change from curb and gutter to bioswales, and then we found a small, what we believe is a historic jail site on the Cardiff town site. So those are the kinds of small things that are included in a reeval, and I can't guarantee that we wouldn't find additional small issues like that. But I'm always hopeful that we're nearly done.
And I'm glad you brought up the jail structure. So that is something new, because I've never seen anything on the jail structure before, so it's a complete new discovery.
We found it walking one day, and so it is kind of hidden in the brush out there.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Thank you for all your hard work.
So I went to an economic symposium last week where they spoke of all the different grants that are coming through and just all the money that's coming through, but they also stressed the importance and the necessity of being shovel-ready for projects. Would this get us a little bit closer to, so that if there was grant money and things like that, we would qualify? Can you speak?
So, yes, but I have to say that, you know, we still need to acquire right-of-way. And like I said, you know, our initial estimate of right-of-way was 26 parcels, about $1.5 million. They recently re-estimated our right-of-way, and we're coming in at about $3.4 million, in, you know, total for all of the acquisitions and temporary and permanent easements. Plus, we have to pay for the all of the different assessments of value.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in total, it probably comes in at about $4.2 million that we need for right-of-way. I have discussed it with Deborah and Steve, and we do have additional bond funds. At this point, you know, they are reluctant to bond for a small amount. They'd rather have, you know, some sort of a guarantee that, you know, we're ready to go to construction and bond for this $20 million that remains in our A&I. But we did have, I think, a positive discussion today with RAFTA. RAFTA does have a $4 million commitment in their Destination 2020 funds towards the project. And it does seem like they're willing to entertain the idea of releasing some of that Destination 2040 funds for us to continue with right-of-way. So I believe we'll make that request to the RAFTA board in October.
Okay, awesome. So that just gets us a little closer to that goal. Okay.
Once we have 100% set of plans and right-of-way, we are shovel-ready. We're ready.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's safe. Obviously, this is difficult. I know when we told CDOT we were thinking about holding off, and their immediate response was, no, you have to keep going. That was like, it's really hard to say to a small city, but that was clearly the intent, like you have to make this as shovel-ready as possible.
Is that partially, Deborah, because of the grant?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And that was my same, I had the same question about when can we be shovel ready? So is there any way, if we do get funding from RAFTA or other sources to you know, work on the right of way, can we expedite that some way? Because a year and a half is, I mean, can we bring in consultants or somehow, is there a way to speed that up?
I mean, there's quicker condemnation processes, right? We can take immediate possession and then work it out to the court, right? Counsel?
Well, I'm not suggesting that.
No. If we're operating in state law, yes. We're not. We're under because we have federal funds involved. It's a federalized project. So you're really on about as fast a track as you can on right-of-way acquisition. I mean, we have to clear plans, then we have to, there's a distinct process that takes about 6 to 9 months on right-of-way acquisition before you can get to the point of even filing during the federal act. It just is.
Okay.
I would,
that was
you may have remembered a few years ago when I wanted to do some things to avoid that on other parts of this right-of-way. That's why.
Echo springs are very sticky.
And that was just my, whatever we can do to expedite it.
And we are, you know, and I will say that we've had, I think, very successful negotiations with property owners as to what their needs are, and we continue to work on that. It is just, you know, it's difficult as we reach this kind of, the plans are ready to go. We need some investment from them as well on some redesign, but where do those dollars go for those folks if we're not ready to move to, you know, we're right at that kind of catch-22 point project from a right-of-way perspective, which is kind of more what we've been working on in my office.
Okay. Okay. My other question is on the noise wall, because I'm just wondering if there's a way to, there was some discussion about possibly putting that off until there was some threshold met on the traffic counts and the noise. I have a lot of concerns about the height of the wall. And also about it restricting wildlife movements, because that's access to the river coming down off of 4 Mile Ranch and through those properties there. And we're putting up a, 12-foot high? Is it 10 feet wall. And just walling off the community is not something that I want to see, so.
You know, I do agree with you, actually. I'm not a big fan of the sound walls. You know, they are a requirement of our environmental assessment. You know, once we signed on the dotted line and said, you know, the environmental assessment is complete, there are a list of mitigation measures, and, you know, the mitigation measure for this particular issue was a conversation with the neighborhood. You know, do you want a sound wall or don't you want a sound wall? And once they vote, you know, we're really committed to the sound walls. There's not very much I can change about it. Like I said, we are going to put these back in front of them to ask them again, because, you know, our consultant has created some graphics, which I don't have here today, about, you know, what would you think of a tree wall? You know, if we brought in, you know, really large, nice evergreens, it doesn't have the same effect as a sound wall, but I think it has a much, I guess, a much better feel from a neighborhood standpoint. So I do think we'll ask again. The other thing that I think might affect the residents' feeling about the sound walls is the proximity to their buildings. And because one of the graphics that they saw when we were looking at sound walls was this one. And here you can see that it's located very close to the sidewalk.
Right.
We have found telecommunication lines, at least 3 different ones that are, you know, between the trees that you can see there and the sound wall itself. And it's very difficult to deal with the telecommunication companies. We're having that issue right now on our South Midland project. You know, we don't have a franchise agreement with them. They review plans, and then they say that we found all their facilities, and then we find them again, and they delay our project as we try to work with them to relocate lines. So in this case, we're trying to avoid that. We're moving the sound wall closer to the buildings to avoid the locations of the telecommunication facilities. And so, you know, the residents may feel differently about it, is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
I would also say that, you know, from a wildlife standpoint, all of the entrances, all of the existing roads will be open. So there will be some access for wildlife moving through. It's probably not as good as it currently is, you know, where they can move through on the lawn areas, but it won't be completely walled off.
Okay, but we do not have an access or an ability to delay the wall based on numbers or anything like that?
No, we checked into that.
Okay, thanks.
Just real quick on the sound walls, is this representation, this rendering that we see here, is that reflective? You said earlier that these sound walls would be moved back as a utility. So is what we're seeing now the condition we would actually see, or would that be back farther?
It would be back further.
Like where are they in relation to those trees?
They're on the other side of those trees.
Oh.
Hmm.
So it might be a different story with those.
Might have a different feeling. I see where we will need to move them to.
Any other questions? Do we have to public comment? Anybody from public want to comment on this?
I believe Meryl Glickman wanted to comment if she's online.
Appropriate, Mr. The attorney for public comment is required, right? It's not required, but absolutely you can. But it's appropriate. It's appropriate, absolutely.
Who's this?
You have Meryl Glickman if you'd like to take public comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Meryl.
You're muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Meryl, could you just give your full name and if you live in Glenwood Springs or not?
Yes, my name is Meryl Lynn Glickman, and I am a part-time resident at 4266 Fanning Place. We would be full-time if our grandchildren weren't in Denver. We've been coming up for, 45 years here. I just wanted to thank the council for their consideration of this wall. I'm going to speak partly representing the board because I'm on the board of Cardiff 2. And I also live about 8 houses in. From a personal standpoint, my husband and I are, whenever we're up there, we look at this as our refuge. And it's gotten considerably noisier already with the little traffic and trucks there are. And there's going to be considerable traffic. So from my personal point of view, I don't want to see the wall. I agree with all of you that who wants a wall? If, an open space is so much prettier, but the noise impact, I believe, is going to be pretty strong. A lot of the children live along that road, and I also think that it will be protective of them. If you look at all of Midland, they've got a lot of walls up, and I think it protects the homeowners. So that's from a personal point of view. From the point of view of the board, we support the vote that our constituents have made. We would prefer to see if there are other alternatives to maintaining the space we have. We would rather have our green space and have the wall further out towards the road. As far as trees go, we already have nice trees. That's not an issue. Trees aren't going to help us, and our issue is sound. So I'd just like you to take that in consideration and see if there are any alternatives to possibly moving the utilities and preserving the beauty of our neighborhood, because it is quite pretty, and it's one of the reasons we purchased there. That's what I have. 18 seconds, and believe it or not, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Meryl. That's Meryl Glickman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, it's not specific. I want it to be reported correctly. That's GLI. No, just kidding. Now. Any other questions? Or what's that? I'm feeling that. All right. We've taken public comment. I'll bring it back for a motion. A motion. That's what I'll bring it back for.
I would make a motion to approve the Southbridge design contract amendment from Jacob. Is that appropriate, Mr.?
I will second the motion.
Thank you.
The motion by Tony Hershey, seconded by Shelley Kopp. I just need to make sure real quick, we're not going to be expending any funds towards design of the tunnel aspect before November 5th, correct?
I won't authorize that piece of work. That
Right.
is included in this dollar value.
Okay. Ryan, let's call the question.
Mayor Godey?
Yes.
Councilor Davis? Yes. Councilor Hershey?
Yes.
Councilor Cow?
Yes.
Councilor Russo?
Yes.
Councilor Set?
Yes.
It's unanimous, 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Terry, thank you so much. There you go.
That's Terry Parch. 5 miles up, 4 miles. Oak Meadows.
I've been repenting.
Item number 17, Locomaster Hanging Lake Trail Restoration.
That would be me. As you know, at the end of July, there were several large debris flows that not only took out chunks of the highway,
but took out Hanging Lake Trail, which is our #1 forest draw. The Forest Service is thinking about doing like 2 steps
to try to address this. The first is cleaning up the debris and rebuilding it at kind of a rudimentary trail, and they're hoping to do that next year. So, you know, maybe sometime during our season getting it done. The second thing they're looking at is a longer-term fix that they're hoping will make the trail more resilient to debris flows, because we can expect to have them for several years. This is so important to us that we are partnering with the Forest Service and the Forest Service Foundation to try to go after grant funding to help do this. The first initial grant we're going after is a CPW grant, $250,000 grant. They need a $50,000 local match. They're also looking at some federal funds that they will also need a match for later. So altogether, they're kind of looking for a $150,000 match. Ken Murphy H2O has about $28,000 of that. The Glenwood Canyon Restoration Alliance has $25,000 that they've committed to. We're asking today for $50,000 from unallocated FAB grant funds to put towards this effort. And I think it's kind of, the ask is kind of for whatever it needs to be. If it needs to be for the, you know, the $100,000 match they need for federal funds, or the $50,000 match they need for this, it's a start. I think we're going to try to do a big press conference event with the Forest Service and the Forest Service Foundation to kick off additional fundraising. So like the big check, happy ceremony, and we get going and we get this trail rebuilt. Yes, sir.
Unallocated FAB fund.
Yes, they did not allocate $150,000 that they had access to this year. And so $50,000 of that would still leave about $100,000 for this year that has not been spent.
Other questions? Okay, I'll open it to the public for public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for motion. Go, Paul.
I'll make a motion that we allocate $50,000 towards the fundraising effort that we need to do with the Forest Service, from the funds that we have from FAB.
And I'll second it.
Been moved by Paul, seconded by Ingrid.
Motion for 50,000? It was from FAB.
So sorry for the mask.
Actually, it's really helpful. If you want to, if you can't hear it, just jump in. Seriously. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. I like doing your job.
Yeah, I like it too. You like doing your job too, or you like the makeup? I like not working.
Yeah, says a guy who's been pulling 20-hour weeks the last 2 weeks. 20-hour days, sorry. Do we need to take a 5-minute break, or do we want to class? We have 3 more items. What's everybody's temperature?
Been done 7 minutes.
I don't think so. 5-minute break. We'll come back here at 8:18.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Because I didn't hear what.
Table the next couple of items?
Are you ready to go, Steve?
Yeah.
What are you flying out
Motion
again?
to approve.
Number 18, affordable housing manager and budget. Number 18.
Affordable housing budget. And-
No, that is the mayor.
Oh, that's me.
Now appearing from City Hall.
I wrote it specifically in the item.
Jonathan voted, everybody.
Hey, Ed McMahon here.
Hi-yo.
All right.
Be dignified.
This is serious business.
Yes.
Try to act.
So thank you. I will. Thank you for that reminder.
Correct.
Yes, it is an act. All right, so I did ask for this on here. We have a strategic plan that identifies that affordable housing is one of our top priorities. The last several polls that the community has conducted have indicated that affordable housing is the highest priority, even above streets and traffic. And so, we had Shelley and I had a RAFTA meeting last week, and one of the RAFTA members said, we really need to see how our budget aligns with our strategic plan. And we really don't have anything in our budget for the thing that we have and the community has constantly identified as one of our highest priorities. So I thought that this would be a good topic of conversation. I think we all said at one time that we would be supportive. Even Tony slipped maybe once and said if we delayed it, he might even consider being supportive of a tax measure in 2022 for affordable housing, however that might look. And so I thought it would be good to have a discussion about putting our money where our mouth is, aligning our budget to our strategic plan and the wishes of the community, and getting a jump on this, hiring an affordable housing manager in advance, and putting it in the 2022 budget. And my suggestion would be to use the unallocated, unbudgeted excess reserves from the tourism fund to fund this position for 1 year only. This wouldn't be an idea of an ongoing one. I think eventually, if this tax were to be successful, that would pass. And if it's not successful, we'd reevaluate it at that time. So with that, I would open the floor to questions for Council Mayor, for me. Paula. Oh, yes.
So I need clarity on two things. One, from Steve Boyd on how that works, pulling money out of that tourism budget to do this, if Steve's around. But if he's not, while I wait for Steve, Jonathan can answer. Jonathan, we have the Garfield County Housing Authority. Can't we incorporate them into helping us this first year as far as designing our direction with housing?
Yeah, and I think Garfield Housing Authority is under Garfield County, and so I think the idea is to have this position. It might be based in the planning department, potentially. I don't know where, that's up to Deborah, but I think with the application we saw tonight of the dedication of both RO units and affordable housing units, the applicant that we've seen several applications that have significant affordable housing and RO components to it. I think that starts to exceed, when you start to get into, 100 units potentially, and prepping for a large revenue ask of the community. I think that exceeds the capacity and the job description of a Garfield County Housing Authority position. I think when we had, 6 units, back in the good old days of 2017, that was appropriate because it was a cute little thing we had that we could contract out and manage with. But I think where we're at now and with these really intentional moves we're making with inclusionary zoning and deed restrictions in our code, that I think it's time that we have someone actually serve that as a purpose. And today we heard, several departments that are kind of choke points. And I don't want to have this as an unfunded mandate in our planning department, where our planning department is choked down because they're doing all these affordable housing things we want them to do, but not give them the dedicated resources to do that. Deborah?
Do you think the answer on using the funding is better served by Carl than by?
Yeah, no.
Carl.
There's no.
Oh, no? Oh, sorry.
Anyway, I think there's a couple of things there. Given that this is we're talking about the 2022 budget. One is that you can do an interfund transfer loan essentially to the general fund, assuming that you have an expectation that there's going to be funding coming in for affordable housing that can pay that fund back. I'd also say that really, something we're becoming acutely aware of is that tourism is part of what has created, sort of the situation. It's that circle that keeps going around we talked about earlier, and it probably falls within contracting for services and materials that may be incidental or necessary or appropriate in the accomplishment of the purposes of the fund. So I think it could fall into either of those categories, and the third option is just to modify the list of uses in your code by the time 2022 rolls around to match up with your budgetary priorities. So 3 different ways that you could approach utilizing those funds, and I think they're all within you guys' discretion.
Yeah, well, I have to.
Oh, go ahead.
I thought you were going to.
Well, I was just going to say one more thing about the funding, but go ahead.
I still need clarification from Steve, because it's been a month since I've seen the tourism budget. That 300,000 that is not appropriated yet, was that going towards their reserve fund, or how is that working?
Yeah, so at the end of 2021, we're projecting to have about $480,000 in total reserves in the tourism fund. And then they have to keep a minimum reserve in there of about $150,000. So that $330,000 that I think you're referring to is just really unallocated or available reserves.
That was the 2021 dollars, not even 2022 dollars.
Correct. I mean, the budget that we're looking at in tourism for 2022 basically nets. They're going to spend about what they earn.
Okay, so we'll still have that same money.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just also say that 2022 budget, if tourism is anticipating spending 30% more on marketing than they did 2021, and they'll still have 330,000 that they don't even have a plan to spend yet. And so that's where some of this money is coming from. Go ahead.
Okay, I have more questions about the need for this, and talking to staff, and also, I guess my thinking on the need is when we were discussing the attractions tax and raising the lodging tax and then putting most of that funding towards housing, I was hearing from the community that that was a great need. There was a lot of support behind it, but that, the feeling was that the plan wasn't quite baked. That we need a plan in place. How are we going to spend this money? How are we going to address the needs of housing with this new funding if those tax measures were to pass? So that's what we did. We delayed it, and we're going to work on this plan. And I guess I see this, if we were to create a position like this, I think I would rather have a position in-house and bring in-house expertise in that has expertise in housing and help us put that plan together for our community, rather than spending a couple $100,000 on a consultant to come in and do that and then have them leave. So I guess we worked with Hannah for a couple of years as being our housing expertise in-house, and now she's moved to another position, and I completely appreciate that, but so right now we have that void. So I guess I'd like to have input from the city manager and possibly from Hannah on, is that a good approach for us to go to have that expertise in-house to help us put that plan together so that when we go to the voters when we start this conversation early next year, we can have a solid plan in place that we've built that's specific to Glenwood Springs to meet our needs for housing.
I would say if it's something that council really wants us to focus on and get pulled together, yes, a position would be very helpful. I would put it in the planning department under Jen and Hannah, because Hannah does have the greatest expertise on staff.
Right.
It's just she cannot do that anymore because
we have promoted her. Yeah, and there are other needs, I understand. And we also have a housing commission to staff. So I think this position could do that, and it would be helpful.
I would just say it's a matter of how much focus council wants us to have on it. If it's something you want us to do when we can fit in, we will continue to do it when we can fit it in. If it's something you want us really focused on, a body always helps us do that.
And it's seen that we've reached crisis level in our community, which we're hearing from businesses and people throughout the community. And it's, as the mayor said, it is a top priority in our strategic plan and in all of our polling. I think it's certainly something that I would support. Where we get the funding, I'm open to conversation on if we're splitting that from the tourism fund, and if we have other funds available, I'm open to best place to pull that funding.
I was going to say, I agree with you, Shelley, and then you kept talking, and I'm not sure. I know that the mayor has latched onto this poll, and it's his favorite new thing, affordable housing. I don't take a lot of stock in that poll. Limited number of people. You ask anyone if they want a free house, and people are pretty good. It's certainly a need, but I think we're really, and what Shelley, what you said, what I agree with, is this is really cart before the horse. Until we put this on the ballot and people vote for it, you know, it's like, I don't know, creating a new golf course and hiring the golf manager before we have the course approved and built. We don't need someone to do this until we're clear on what the voters want. I think what you saw from the public in previous public hearings is that people are very, very concerned with growth. There have been a lot of letters to the editor, concerns about water and growth and where the direction this community is going. And until until we have a consensus, until that decision is made to spend tens of thousands of dollars on somebody just to be the housing director when there is no housing, seems unfortunate. I'll just remind you all, in Aspen, they have an APCHA, the Aspen, whatever it's called, APCHA, Mr. Mayor? The giant housing authority that they use has been an organization for decades, and they are still going through growing pains and have had problems. To just think you're just gonna snap your fingers and fix this problem or create this problem because you're gonna hire someone and create a board, to me seems not realistic. So I would like to wait until we have more discussions on this later in the year. I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Tony. I think, you know, we're not trying to solve this all with the snap of our fingers. I think these things are done strategically, and when we had conversations about their strategic planning and we had our strategic retreat, this was identified, not by the poll, the poll came out after that, but is identified as, from this council, as one of our top priorities. And so if we're not, you know, show me a person's checkbook and I'll show you their priorities. And our checkbook does not show that we have affordable housing as a priority. I think that if we're serious about addressing this at any point, we have to take the first step. And the first step is aligning our strategic plan with what we say our priorities are. And Councilor Hershey, you just voted for a project that's going to give us, I think, 8 affordable housing units. Who's going to manage those? Who's going to oversee those? These kind of things will happen to us, and if we don't manage it, it will manage to overwhelm us. And it's going to be part of the new planner's job that's going to replace Hannah. Sorry, saw you. And so I feel like we're going down this road where we're making it a priority. We're saying to staff, let's do this. Let's go. We're excited. We're kind of all moving. The community, the business community is saying, let's go to this. But we're not setting ourselves up for success. And that's what this is, I think, is setting ourselves up for success. And if the tax doesn't pass in 2022, I think there'll still be a need to make this a priority in our community, whether it is still through code revisions and incentives and partnerships or not. And so that's why this was brought up, Tony.
Thank you.
Did I steal this from you?
That's okay. I feel like you really want to talk about this.
Thank you.
So I'm like, rock on.
You go first, and
No, you go.
No, I just actually had another question more so than a comment on it. So we're looking at something else, I think still later in the agenda, about a problem with our
ADUs and having the workforce that could kind of take care of some of the things that,
Short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, yes, the short-term rentals. And I'm kind of curious if we're not pushing this too fast and not giving the staff an opportunity to look at what is the bigger gap? You know, do we need a housing manager? Do we need a position that kind of encompasses some of these shortfalls that we have as far as staffing that takes care of all of these things? And so I'm a little concerned that we brought it before us tonight. And my question to the staff is this what we want a housing manager, is something we want a little bit different to kind of encompass some of the shortfall we have in staff?
I think, and this is, I want to be totally clear, this is something we support if council wants us to make it a priority, right? Just having more capacity and planning always helps. So if that, you know, I would be careful because we are hiring someone who would be interacting with the housing commission, but, you know, hard to say this the right way. Yes, I mean, for everything you guys want us to do, if you want us to do it well, we always need someone to focus on it. So it's really your decision on how important it is to you. Does that make sense?
It doesn't quite answer my question. Is it a different kind of job that we really need? Because I'm hoping that this question that we're going to try to resolve later is not something that's going to happen year to year, because in that planning and zoning department or whatever it is, you know, that person needs to do a bigger job than just being the housing manager.
I mean, I think we're actually quite happy with where our short-term rentals ended up. So I don't think this would be their real focus. It's just, if you guys want someone who actively is managing housing that we have and looking for ways to create more housing and then coming up with a plan to potentially create affordable housing, there is nobody on my staff to do that, right? We can do it as we can, but no one can solely focus on that, and it's a really big job.
So I was going to compete with Tony for coming up with good analogies, and his was the golf course, and mine was going to be, you know, hiring a mechanic before you buy the car. It actually feels a little premature, but I also agree that, you know, laying the foundation is always helpful, and I know that there's a lot of talk about affordable housing, and I know that it doesn't just one day sprout up because we get units approved. With that in mind, I just don't feel comfortable moving forward on a full-time $100,000 position. I could probably get behind a part-time position. I think it's an opportunity to segue someone in, see if they're a good fit, see if they do bring value, keep them busy, but I cannot support the full-time position, so.
And I just say, I don't think this is a time position you find part-time. This isn't, I mean, maybe, I think if we were to contract this task out or this field of interest out, we would probably be paying significantly more to get a part-time product. But if we're trying to hire for, you know, a Doug Pratt kind of, you know, land use, I don't know why Doug Pratt, just because he was here tonight, but if we're trying to hire somebody for that, I don't think it's reasonable to think that there's somebody sitting around that would do it for 20 hours a week. And so I think that's, you know, and I think this council has in the past said to staff, you know, we value and we strongly want to see special events. So we want you staff to hire a special events coordinator. That's how we got Pat Miller. And I don't think that position's ever going to go away. And we said we need communication. You know, we are hearing from community that we weren't making communication priority, so that's where we're in a Starbucks. And so I think there's, you know, I don't think it's a good idea to necessarily drive every hire, but when we have something that is, you know, communication wasn't our top priority. Special events wasn't our top priority as identified in our strategic plan. This is. And so I guess that's why I'm just kind of wondering where this council is at. If we're really serious about affordable housing, we have to give staff the support. We have to give ourselves the support to bring ideas. All these people talking about last time, a month ago, 2 months ago, this is too quick, we don't have it sussed out. Well, who susses it out? There's somebody that's got to sit there with this ad hoc committee. There's somebody that's got to sit there with the Housing Commission. There's somebody that's got to sit there with us and bring us ideas. There's somebody that's got to manage the stuff that's already coming at us. And so I just don't know when we're going to make this a priority. And I guess I'm just personally frustrated that we have a strategic plan that we say we follow, that we feel is important, but yet we never take concrete steps to go there. So I guess maybe it's just my frustration that nothing seems to happen. It always gets talked about tomorrow and next time. And so we can't pass $3 million worth of new taxes a month ago. But certainly we can hire a $100,000 planner to get us to the position where we can make this a priority. Because we can't spend $100,000 on one position. I think we really need to reexamine our strategic plan. I really do. Because I don't think we're not putting our money where our mouths are. And that's my impassioned plea.
Okay, but there's a minority of people in this community who don't support affordable housing, and I represent them too. So you have to be aware, Jonathan, that not everyone agrees with you on that, okay?
That's your opinion.
Right, it's not my opinion. It's what some people, you think 100% of this community wants affordable housing, because they do not.
I don't care.
Well, okay.
Tony.
Don't care what the people.
No, Tony.
You demonstrated that again and again and again. Don't bang that gavel, it's obnoxious.
So are you, Tony?
You need to stop talking.
Hey, Tony.
We're not on Zoom, you can't.
If you were at our strategic plan, I knew you had more important things, but when you were not at our strategic plan, took no part in our strategic retreat, and when you sit there on your personal laptop and type out work emails all night and don't listen to applications, you don't get to sit there and criticize me.
Attorneys on Facebook and other people that are inappropriate. I'd like to make a motion to get rid of you as mayor right now. That's the only vote I regret on this board from sitting here for 2.5 years.
And you've made that clear, Tony.
Can we have a point of order? Let's not get into
You just attacked me
argument.
personally, Shelley.
I would like to,
Remember, we're all working for the people of Florence, so let's all tidy up our behavior.
All the people of Florence.
Exactly, all the lots of different voices up here. Let's get back to work.
getting back to task, I guess I would like to make a proposal, because this is the first time we're seeing this. It's the first time on the agenda. So I guess because what I'm hearing is that this is kind of quick. This first time we've heard this, people think that it might be the cart before the horse. And what is this person going to do? But I've also heard in the past that there is a very strong commitment to housing from a majority of the council. And so I guess I would like to push this back to city manager and staff and maybe come up with a job description, something that will get us to where we have said we want to be by February of next year, and how that job description might function going forward within the city, as opposed to us hiring high-priced housing consultants to come in and just work for us for a temporary time and then leave. So if that would be acceptable, then maybe we can come back and continue this discussion at another meeting.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion, if we need a motion, or if we can just direct.
Is this a motion to continue to the next meeting?
Or how about giving you a month, second meeting in October?
And I would just you guys don't ever approve job descriptions?
Yeah.
So I want to be really careful with that.
Well, but this is a new creation of a job description, so.
How about a description of how it would potentially operate in the organization, and what more of a, what we'd want them to work on rather than a job description?
That works fine.
You're wanting us to identify a need and express it to you that we feel like there's a need for this, and you can come back to us with some structure.
Yes.
Okay. If I may?
Anna, yes, please.
Very quickly. Just hearing what you guys are talking about, I'm happy to be a part of that process and kind of describe what staff has been doing the last 3-4 years and what our capacity needs have been. Not so much on the job description, but what we have been doing, what we're being prepared to contract out, and other things that you can make a more informed decision if you think this is necessary. I'm not going to tell you whether it is or not.
Right.
The fact.
Well, and just if we want to further an agenda, and, we've had a priority of working with the regional housing study, which came out in 2019. We really have not been able to do that besides just look at data. So things like that, coming back with that, that would help me to make a decision on this.
And do you think you'd be prepared to have that conversation the second meeting of October?
I believe so. Okay. If Deborah also agrees.
I think if you have time and.
Time. Time was, yeah. Sure. Okay.
But is that the will of council?
Is it?
I mean,
Do you
I hear,
want to take a vote on
I hear
it?
you talking, and
We can take a vote on
I think you
it.
should have a motion and take a vote on it.
Okay, well, that's, my motion is to ask staff to bring that back in second meeting in October.
That would not come along with a funding recommendation.
Okay, that's fine.
Second that.
I want to make one comment about it.
I don't know why I have to be his carrier.
If we were to vote on this evening, I would not support it. But I do believe that dialogue is really important for us to come up with things that are for the benefit of the community and that do align with our strategic plan. With that in mind, I'm willing to do this dialogue in a work session. And if staff is willing to look into this, I'm willing to support that. Okay?
So do we want to come back in a work session? Do you think that'd be the better format?
I don't know.
I would just bring it back.
Okay, great.
All right. Ryan, let's call the question.
All right, so the motion, the motion is by Councilor Couch, the second is by Mayor Godis. Councilor Davis. No.
Wait, what's the motion?
The motion is for, staff to put together a, plan of what this position might do, how it could further our housing, affordable housing interests, and bring it back to council. Second meeting in October.
Mayor Godis.
Yes.
Councilor Stetton.
Yes.
Councilor Couch.
Yes.
Councilor Russo.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
No.
It passes 4-2.
Davis, did you?
He voted.
Oh, he did, okay.
I was first up.
Oh, okay.
And then I know.
I hope we'll be able, just to comment, with the new technology, are we going to get back to push-button instantaneous voting?
All right, next item, item 19, ordinance 11, series 2021. This is snow removal, leaves and right-of-way, and snow plowing and street sweeping.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present ordinance 11, amending sections of 90 and 100 of the municipal code. It's related to snow removal, leaves and debris in the right-of-way, and noise. This ordinance would prohibit depositing snow and ice and leaves and debris into the right-of-way, and that's in service to keeping the curbs and gutters cleaned and maintained, and it helps us with street operations. Additionally, we've been requested to include changes to 170-30, which would clarify that snow plowing and street sweeping operations are not construction noise, because those operations often have to take place very early in the morning or overnight, and that's important to snow removal and street sweeping from the Public Works Department. And with that, I'm open to any questions you might have.
We outlaw leaf blowers. Leaf blowers.
And we outlaw them?
Talk about noise. Sorry, it's a pet peeve of mine.
I will approach leaf blowers like I did, a question from a council member who asked if I could, find a way to make people leash their cats. And I suggested that a fact-finding mission on my part, someplace far, far away, was a great way to approach that. And I'm thinking that leaf blowers fall into the same, like, lots of people love them, lots of people hate them. I know, I totally, like, I hate them and I own one, so like.
It was just a thought, since we were talking about noise and leaf blowers blowing all the stuff into the street right of way. I thought that might be a solution.
Any other questions?
We digress. I thought you were gonna help load now.
Other questions? Thanks, Jen. Public comment.
Anybody from the public like to comment? Anybody online? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back for a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 1130, amending section 090.070.090.040.080 and 100.070.030 related to snow removal, these and right away, no plowing.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Paula, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, item number 20, resolution 2021-24, temporarily suspending renewal provisions of accessory tourist rentals and short-term rentals in the city.
Skip to the vote, please.
The what?
Just a second, I have to bring a presentation up.
I wasn't ready for it yet.
Okay. I have to fix the typo first. Okay, so, this resolution is specifically to waive one of the requirements to renew, sorry. No, you can do that.
Okay.
Where we at? Okay, so anyhow, staff is in the process of, oh, this is Emery, sorry, I'm used to Zoom.
But introduce himself.
All right, I'm used to Zoom, you know, where it has a little box next to your name. So Emery Ellington, Planner 1 with Community Development. So right now, staff is in the middle of going through the process of renewing all of the short-term rental and accessory tourist rental permits. And so the purpose of this resolution is to waive one specific requirement, and that specific requirement is every permit holder, when they go to renew, they need to show proof that they have submitted lodging tax during the last 2 years of their permit period. Basically, a use it or lose it clause. And so staff is proposing that for this, just specifically this next permit period, which will be 2022 and 2023, that we just waive that requirement as part of the renewal process. So I just have a short presentation that I'll just go over because again, in 2019, City Council changed and added some of the regulations for short-term rentals. And so let's go through that and then just a little bit more information on why staff is requesting the waiver of this specific requirement for the next permit period. So like I said, in 2019, City Council modified regulations. This included increasing fees, requiring building inspections, and adding distance requirements. And so currently we have two types of permits. Short-term rental is where you would rent the entire house, whether you live there or not. And then the accessory tourist rental is, it's more like when Airbnb first started. It's where you have one room in your house, has a limit of 2 people. And then we also, the short-term rental has a distance requirement. You cannot be within 250 feet of the nearest permit. So the short-term rental has that distance requirement. The accessory tourist rental does not. So that's always available to any person in town that might want to use their house in that way. So again, here are just some numbers. In 2018, 2019, there were quite a few more permits. The rules were instituted in 2019, and then you can see with the next permit period, 2020, 2021, there was a pretty significant decrease for both types of permits. So about a third dropped off in that period of time. Of that group, most was just people declining to renew, whether that be they didn't want to do the building inspection, wasn't worth it to them, you know, for whatever reason, they just didn't renew their permit. Permits do terminate with the sale of a home, so we have had some that have gone away as a result of that. Of the amount that have actually been sold, some of them have come back in with the permit, but again, that's all dependent on their distance and proximity to another permit. So that's, the distance requirement has gone a long way in limiting new permits. And I have some maps which kind of illustrate that. And again, during that time, past 2 years has been an interesting time, certainly. There have been some additional permits added. So in total, we've had 17 new permits in the past 2 years. And then again, City Council did add some caps in 2019. And so this is definitely intended as a way to regulate the amount. In effect, it actually doesn't have quite as much of an effect as the distance. You can see, so we differentiate it within the GID, so roughly downtown, outside the GID, the rest of the city. There's more capacity for more permits, but probably we won't reach that because of that distance requirement. Probably more likely within the downtown area, because actually downtown area, that distance requirement doesn't apply. So we probably will reach the cap downtown, but citywide probably won't come anywhere near to that anytime soon. So just have a couple of maps. So everything, orange circles are new permits in the last 2 years. Blue triangles is everything that existed before, and the pink areas is the 250 feet boundaries. So you can just sort of see where there have been new ones. And as a note, if you see a symbol without a pink circle, that's one of the accessory tourist rentals, and they don't have that distance affecting their neighbors. And so we have South Glenwood, see a couple new ones, the sort of middle part of town. The GID is specifically called out in the green. So here's just a little bit closer. And this is in the report too, so if you want to look at them more closely. And again, there's a couple out in West Glenwood too. And so again, so the reason why staff has asked for this waiver, there are 2 reasons. One reason is on a staff level, there have been some changes at a state level on how taxes are collected. So before, owner would make a reservation, and that owner individually would remit all the lodging tax to us as a city. So we would get that from all the different individual owners, and then when they went to renew, on our side, we would be able to see that and attribute it to each permit, and we could do that all on our end. So now what happens is Airbnb and VRBO will collect all the taxes from all the permits in town and give that to us in a lump sum. So we don't have an easy way to track that. So having this in place, and this is something that we're still working through. This was instituted this year. And so I've been working a lot with the finance department, trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. It's going to require individual follow-up with every single permit holder to ask for their statements, proof that there were stays, because again, we can't do that on our end. And so that's going to be a lot of staff time. So that was one reason why. And then the second reason why is that just in the past 2 years, I mean, at one point, City Council prohibited anybody from using their permits. That might have caused someone to use their property differently. Maybe for public health reasons. Again, if you have an accessory tourist rental, you're receiving guests in your home while you're there, so maybe someone didn't use it. And so in the face of that, this would provide a little bit of relief to those permit holders, because if we keep this requirement in place, when I process the applications, if they can't show that they've used it in the last 2 years, that permit will be pulled. So, which again, if that's what you decide is best, staff is fine with that too, but we just think that between providing relief to current permit holders and then saving staff time, we think that waiving this requirement, and again, just for this specific upcoming permit period, this is a good rule. It makes people use it because again, if you have a short-term rental permit, that opportunity is not available to your neighbors. And so you really, staff believes that I think it's a good rule. Have it be for the next permit period, but just for this specific one, given the last 2 years and then the changes in taxes, our opinion.
I kind of understand why we put that in place at the time of, like, if you didn't, it was a use it or lose it thing, right? But the reality is, people that would have this permit and they come up on their renewal, they would just pay you some lodging tax, even though they never used it anyway.
Correct. So code red, there was no minimum amount set on it. It was some amount of lodging tax. And again, part of that is because people do use their properties differently. Someone might rent it for a weekend while they're gone. some people might have the property exclusively for that. And so, yeah, that's correct.
I just don't see that that's an indication of use at all. I don't know why we even track that at all, you know, for that renewal.
Yeah, I think at the time it was a desire, and I think, distance separations probably had a bigger impact on the number of short-term rentals than anything else. I mean, we're still well under our caps. But I do think it was just the concept that it is a valuable commodity, and you don't want to. Yeah, I think what I'd suggest is that, you know, and a couple of things have changed as was pointed out with the institution of the SUT system, the statewide collection on this and into these aggregate amounts. We just have to figure out how we're going to, I mean, even beyond this issue, is everybody remitting, right? Because we're getting these lump sums. And so it's something we need to work through anyway. And so I think not pulling it completely off the books until we've worked through that and see if there is maybe there's some report we get that will help us with that. I mean, because that is the other component of it, is that you just want to make sure people are actually collecting and remitting.
And part of that conversation was vacation rentals are a valuable piece of the tourist economy, and we didn't want 50 or 60 people just putting their marker out for whatever, $100 a year, or whatever it was at the time, to preserve their right and not actually using it for that. You know,
We're still doing that.
Yeah, but I mean, is that a large part, do you think of? I mean, is that?
I don't know. But and what he's talking about is literally the VRBO and the Airbnb. But I know a lot of people that don't use either of those services in this community.
Really?
Yeah.
Correct. Some owners will just remit that amount directly. I mean, I use Airbnb, VRBO as the example because that's how it applies to the SUT. But yeah, some owners will just
directly
make their own reservations. There's no requirement. It's just the two main sites that probably 90% of our permits have listings on.
You indicate that part of this is because of economic conditions that we would give this waiver. Do we have any data that if Airbnb is submitting taxes in these big lump sums, can we compare like fourth quarter of 19 to the fourth quarter of 20? And are we seeing that it's any less? Maybe that's a better Steve Boyd question.
The only challenge with that actually is in 2019 it was done differently. 2020 it was done individually, so that would be the only.
Okay.
But I think that we've been on this.
Well, so, I mean, Carl is right. This is all kind of driven by, you know, this case that changed in North Dakota, and so now there's this state sales and use tax system, and it'll get worked out. The Department of Revenue's got a ways to go, but it's a mess right now. So in theory, what is being said here is true. In practice, not so much. I mean, I've been on lots of calls with Airbnb and with Travelocity and all kinds of those groups, and some of them feel like we shouldn't have to collect this. Some of them feel like it's easier for us to collect this. As such, they're not even really accepting those payments, so somehow they have to, you know, remit directly to us, and it's a mess. So it's virtually impossible for our team to know who's paying how much and when. And when we get these big lump sums from somebody like Airbnb, we have no visibility into it at all. I mean, we don't know who it was, we don't know anything. And there are a lot of, you know, home rule cities like us that are kind of objecting to that because we'd like to know which of these properties is actually generating this income for us.
And it seems like it would be relatively easy for, I'm not going to try to do the administration on it because, you know, of course, I'm like, let me see how I can fix this. What I would say, though, is that I do believe that Airbnbs and short-term rentals they're a diverse type of lodging that we need. We need to secure that, and I think we have put some good checks and balances into place in order for it to work and to work well so that we don't have too many. But I also do know that there are neighbors who just don't want one next door, so when they can pull a permit, they do. And that requirement for the lodging tax to submit some, it's a pretty easy way without making it quantifiable for them to show that, oh, here you go, here's some money, I'm going to keep my permit active. And I think that it's a healthy, it's like an ecosystem of lodging choices, right? And that I want that short-term rental component to be a healthy component. I don't want it to get too large, but I also don't want to have it lean back just because neighbors start to get angsty about it. So keeping balance is healthy. With that in mind, I'm comfortable with this little window saying you guys maybe need to have an opportunity to figure out how best to move forward. But I absolutely want to see that if you have a short-term rental permit, you are providing the dates that you're renting it and collecting lodging taxes, because otherwise it, you know, it's just not working like it should.
And I think to that, what I was going to say to that point is that this gives us a little bit of time, one, because we need to work through this kind of SUTS issue that, are we on year 2? Yeah, of working on this. And so we need to work through that, and so it's a little hard for us to verify on this. And the other one is to give us some time to think about what's, you know, should there be a minimum number of days?
Sure.
And, you know, that is attached, something like that. I mean, and that's something for you guys to be thinking about, not that we need to solve it tonight. And like you said, this is a very narrow, and what I was going to say, this is a very narrow waiver just to get us through this permitting period with some sense of sanity.
Yeah.
For Emory, not for me, because I just like
And how do you
to walk away.
verify whatever information is submitted for the renewal?
Well, you know, that's absolutely true on anything, and we'll be stopping by to do the audit on your business tomorrow.
Yeah.
Since you raised that, let me make a note as to where I'm going tomorrow. So that is actually one of those things we can do.
2 hours and 40 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that, to be precise. So anyway, you're absolutely right, and we do always reserve audit, you know, privileges. It's like any other taxpayer, because, like I said, I mean, you can always lie on your taxes. I would never.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I didn't mean you say that, but we will be stopping by tomorrow.
These short-term rentals, though, if we're getting a tax check from them, a big lump payment, so too are the owners. I mean, there's a way for us to track it. So I definitely appreciate that you need the time to figure this out. If you need direction from us on fine-tuning that short-term rental language in the code, let us know if there's some recommendations. And let's get it tight, but let's get it working.
Steve, do you have the similar problem when people book hotels and you pay for it through Travelocity or TripAdvisor, and I pay I reserve my room and I pay the fee, and
Yeah, there is some of that.
so you've already got a sample to kind of work off of?
These guys that do, I mean, like I say, there's a lot of different opinions out there, and the companies that we talk to don't all see it the same way. It will work itself out. I mean, our Department of Revenue is gonna have to get this resolved, and I can tell you they're working hard to do that.
Okay.
So there will be some cleaning up of all of this, but it may take another, I mean, say year 2, we're on year 2 of it actually being in place, we're on year 4.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Trying to get it in place.
Yeah,
So this
that's
isn't
true.
gonna happen anytime super soon.
All right.
It takes a little while.
Well, you deserve a break, Emory. That's what I mean.
I'll just say I agree with what Ingrid just said. And I'm also really happy to see the data and see that some of the restrictions we put in place on short-term rentals are working to protect our housing supply, because that's our top priority, is to protect that supply for our workforce. And I also agree with, let's figure out a good system to monitor that. But can I also verify, though, it's not that we're giving them a break from having to pay those taxes during this permit period. They're still required to pay those taxes. But it's just specifically that permitting that they have to prove they collected taxes during that 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah, there's no waiver of payment. We're just saying, you don't have to submit proof that you did pay. I mean, we're getting these lump sums. We have had some owners say, look, I didn't want anybody in my house.
Right, during COVID, right.
Right, so that's fair. It's probably not a huge percentage, but it's some. And so that's all we're saying, is that for purposes of renewing your permit, you don't have to establish that. Doesn't mean that you aren't obligated
to pay your lodging tax.
Lodging taxes, And going back to Steve's question, if for some reason, we do, kind of glance through listings and things like that, if it looks like you're, a super host and we haven't seen any money from you, we may be stopping by to chat.
Well, especially if it looks like in the budget, we're approving a new position to do enforcement of those types of things. Leo?
I just wanted to say before you guys voted and we wrapped this up that, this is a relatively small issue. You guys should be proud of the work you did I think what you did, the result we got is what you wanted. It was short, it was very painful. Hannah and planning did an amazing job, and we've done a wonderful job keeping up with it. And you should be proud of where we landed. We were literally having an academic came in and they were studying housing issues in resort communities. It's like, let's talk about short-term rentals. And Hannah was explaining to him what he did, and like 2 minutes into it, he pulled out his recorder and said, start over. You're a success story. So I want you to be proud of what you did with us. Great.
Well, I'll just say that every time we talk about community outreach, the gold standard is that vacation. Like South Canyon, we do what Hannah did.
I thought you were going to use the word robust, and I was going to have Steve Davis hit you.
No, but it was. Yeah, I think the community bought in. I think that's the thing we always fall back on. And so whenever we want something, we're like, just have Hannah do the thing that she did 2 years ago.
It was easy, right?
I'd like to say thanks, Emery, and welcome, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you more.
Emery, how long now have you been with us? A little over a year?
2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
But a big chunk of that was,
I make a motion to, it's not really renew, it's create this temporary.
It's just approve the resolution.
Approve the resolution.
Second.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All those in favor of resolution 21-24, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
Second. The mayor was it.
I was second. Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
I'll abstain.
Motion carries 5-0-1 with Councilor Davis abstaining.
But that's a vote for affirmation.
By the charter, that is, in fact.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I read my homework.
City manager report. That's something. Oh, we're going to talk about masks.
Yes, masks. Do you guys want to require masks in council chambers during city council?
Only if the governor says we have to.
Right. It should be.
Only if the CDC advises us to.
We need a vote if we're gonna change anything.
If we don't vote, it's just the way it was. If the governor tomorrow said everyone has to wear a mask, we would wear a mask.
My motion is, I move that we follow the Center of Disease Control's recommendation that all people wear masks in areas of high incident rate, which we are, that we wear masks indoors regardless of our vaccination rate.
What?
Are we high incident
We are.
at this point?
Yes.
Because everything that the county shows us is in yellow, caution. Accordingly. I mean, I guess.
I can quantify that.
Yeah, and that's
The data?
certainly different than what we've done for the last 2 years. Because we've just followed the state mandate, state mandate. Now you're saying you want us to follow the federal.
No, we did a mask order before anybody else in the state originally. So we kind of led the way on some of these things. We haven't always followed the state.
I mean, I'm not against that.
We had an outdoor mask order and the state didn't do that.
Or just following up on the data question, the 14-day incident rate in Garfield County is 425, and that is definitely in red. 7-day incident rate is just under 200, that is in yellow.
And I looked at those numbers this morning, and I don't understand how, if you add the last 2 weeks individually, the 7-day rates, they add to about half of what the 14-day rate is. So explain the data to me, please.
I don't think I can explain Garfield County data
I was
to you.
going to say that is not,
All I know is every other meeting I go to has other than the county, has everybody wearing masks indoors. We're the only meeting body that doesn't do masks anymore.
So my experience is that it's mostly those who want to wear them, but I'm seeing the frequency of which people are wearing them to be increasing. That's what I noticed.
So let's go back to Zoom.
Okay.
Okay. I'll vote for that. Second.
I think it's also for our public too. I mean, when we had the, 2 weeks ago, we had the folks in, 3/4 of them were wearing masks. I think to make members of the public and our staff more comfortable is, anyway, that's my motion.
What was it?
My motion is that we return to an indoor mask order, and I'll just leave it at that.
For council meetings.
For just council meetings.
Regardless of the CDC, or the governor, or
No.
the Department of Health, or.
Based on the CDC recommendation.
Yeah.
I'll second it, yep.
Been moved by myself, seconded by Paula Stepp, that's S-T-E-P-P. What, he's not even here? He's not even here? Any further conversation?
Yeah, I'll just add to my second is that,
I'm in a situation right now, that due to my phone being near somebody, I was contacted by the public health department saying that, you've been vaccinated, you can be in a room and have a mask on, but you have been exposed to somebody that had COVID, and we just don't know right now. And, I just think that, we're in a time of caution right now, and I was at a meeting in Grand Junction, a public meeting with 50, 60 people in it, in a room, and 4 of us had a mask on. So I don't know if that was a meeting where somebody else had this happening to them, and we're just at a point right now where kids are dying. Kids are dying now. So I just think, let's take a little precaution. This is a good thing that we could do as an example for our community, and number 2, for safety, for the people sitting back there, for the people sitting over here, for the people sitting on this dais. So I just recommend that we follow CDC guidelines.
Last question. Councilor Russo.
No.
But.
Mayor Gervis. Yes. Councilor Stepp.
Yes.
Councilor Cowell.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
No.
Councilor Davis.
No.
3-3, it passes.
No.
I would just, note for you guys, this is the only public meeting in any jurisdiction that I attend that I'm not masked as a requirement of the building.
Well, you can make this motion every 2 weeks.
I have been.
You can wear a mask.
No, I know. I was just saying, just as a general matter in, half dozen counties I work in.
In Steve, or in Minnesota?
Yeah, it's countywide mask mandate.
So I would like to just throw out another alternative, and that is that at the beginning of all of our meetings, we strongly encourage people to wear them. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with just saying, just as an FYI, our incidence rate is high, and CDC does recommend that groups of like this size wear them, and then leave it at that. Not saying they have to, and those who want to can. And I'm comfortable with that, and I would probably be wearing mine. But I'm not going to until until the governor says this is the mandate. I don't think.
My concern with that, Ingrid, is the people most likely to be infected are the people most likely to say, I'm not gonna wear a mask.
No, and I really do appreciate that, and I live with someone who lives with you guys. But what I do know is that freedom and just the things there have a private property rights is it's a slippery slope. That when it works right now, that's working for you guys, that's what you want to do, but I just worry in how we execute things, that we do it consistently, unilaterally, and not just when it's, I don't know, I don't want to go, this is a really big philosophical question that I don't believe belongs up here. I think we can make a vote and we can move on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we did know.
Yeah, exactly.
City Attorney?
I don't really have anything other than, I will be sick the day that you talk about marijuana or short-term rentals again.
That's the meeting you didn't want me to come to.
Right, I can tell you now, I don't know what that date is, but I'm sick.
I get a motion?
Mike, guys.
Make a motion to adjourn, and Steve will second it.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Steve. All in favor? All opposed? Opposed. Motion fails. We're still in session. I'll take another motion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.